Monday after he was investigated for bribery. Zelensky says his government will not tolerate corruption and hinted there may be more personnel changes to come. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
Germany says it'll soon decide whether to send heavy battle tanks to Ukraine to help it fight Russian forces. Poland is asking Germany for approval to send German-made tanks owned by Poland to Ukraine. A new study released today finds that the rapid transition to telemedicine during the pandemic did not affect treatment for opioid use disorder. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports findings show telemedicine neither improved nor hurt that care.
The study looked at medical records of nearly 12,000 privately or publicly insured patients in the year following COVID lockdown in the U.S. It found no significant differences in frequency of doctor visits, the number of people starting medication, or health outcomes for those patients who relied on telemedicine heavily versus those who still saw clinicians in person. Early in the pandemic, telemedicine for treatment of addiction raised concerns that increased access to remote prescribing, for example, might lead to unsafe outcomes. The study, published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, finds telemedicine is comparable to in-person care for opioid addiction. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline, and the sun is shining. As Boston's Asian American communities celebrate the Lunar New Year, they are also dealing with shock and sadness over not one but two mass shootings in California. The shootings, which left 11 dead after a Lunar New Year celebration in Monterey Park, and another that left 7 people dead in Half Moon Bay. Yasmin Padamsi Forbes heads the state's Asian American and Pacific Islanders Commission. She says the timing of the shootings in a minority and a majority Asian community is particularly sensitive.
Naturally, everyone's really concerned about it. At a time like this, when you need to celebrate and come together, there's going to be a lot of fear.
Police believe the Monterey shooter, who died from a self-inflicted gunshot, was acting on a personal grudge. The shooter at Half Moon Bay did turn himself in without incident. A federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit by 3 former Whole Foods employees who said that they had been illegally fired for going against the grocery chain's alleged discipline of workers who wore Black Lives Matter masks. The case was dismissed in Boston yesterday when U.S. District Judge Allison Burroughs found little evidence to refute Whole Foods' explanation for strictly enforcing the dress code and no substantial evidence that it had targeted the plaintiffs by firing them in the summer of 2020. And the Bruins are in Montreal tonight. The Celtics are at Miami. We are looking at a sunny day today, low 40s. We're at 36 right now. I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Annie E. Casey Foundation, using research and evidence to develop solutions that help families and communities create a brighter future for young people. More information is available at aecf.org.
I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, and we are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News, and we are live from the Boston Public Library, as we are every Tuesday and Friday. But today, Jim Braude is not here, and Jared Bowen, Executive Arts Editor at GBH, is filling in for Jim Braude, who has the day off. Hello, Jared.
Hi, Marjorie. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you as well. Okay, so we are not even a full month into the year, and as you've been hearing on the news, nearly 70 people have been murdered in mass shootings across the country, including in 2 mass shootings within days of each other in California. There were more than 600 mass shooting events that took place in 2022 alone, according to the Trace, which tracks this kinds of thing. More than 20,000 people were killed by guns in the United States last year, and that does not include deaths from suicide. Okay, we've been here before. We're going to be here again. We talked about this morning before we went on the air. We even talked about
some distance. Finally, at one point, I was able to pull the gun away from him, shove him aside, create some distance, point the gun at him, intimidate him, shout at him and say, "Get the hell out of here. I'll shoot. Get away. Go."
And by the way, this young man said when he first saw this man coming toward him with a gun, pointing the gun at him, he said, well, just like you said, this is it. This is it for me. I'm dead. I've had it. And then he said something just, a switch went off, and he just got this adrenaline rush, and he said, you know what, I'm going to try to stop him from killing people. But he said he was frozen when he first saw it, just frozen by fear. So anyway, 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text at if you think that, just get your reaction. I mean, I don't have any good ideas what to do, so I suppose I shouldn't expect you to have any good ideas what to do either. I mean, it's really getting kind of frustrating.
Well, I think to some degree we're doing what we can, which is to talk about this and not keep it normalized and make sure that these are actual events and not just part of everyday life anymore. Shall we start with our calls? And
Absolutely.
Go to Michelle in Concord. Hi, Michelle.
Good morning. It's a quick point. The only way things are going to change is when people only elect representatives that are going to change the gun laws. Because the people, they're not listening to the people. If we've got 80% of the people wanting change and we're not getting it, that's because of who's in Congress. So we have to change who's in Congress.
You'll have to move to Texas or something, Michelle, or Louisiana or Alabama, because I think we're pretty much in consensus here in Massachusetts. We have very strong gun laws, and, we have some of the...
No, I mean
Go ahead.
In the country, yes. I, of course, can't live anywhere but Massachusetts. It's the only sane state as far as I'm concerned. But, obviously, a lot of the people who want gun laws changed do live all over this country, and they have to stop electing people with the status quo position.
Yeah, Michelle, thank you for the call. I mean, I don't know. We have so many places that are very gerrymandered within states across the country that, tragically, your vote doesn't count in a lot of these states, because even if you vote for someone who's for gun control, certain states are so gerrymandered, like Ohio, that you can't, your vote, if you're a Democrat, sadly doesn't even count anymore.
Well, and Pat Lowell's texting us saying as long as the NRA and gun lobbyists are allowed to buy politicians, there will not be gun control. And of course, they have huge sway in Washington. We know this even after the last couple of years where their organization was turned inside out for some of their financial misdeeds, but has not had much of an impact on their strength.
Yeah, the guy from the runs the NRA was buying all those expensive suits. Remember that? He got in trouble for his spending money on luxury items. Maddie from Watertown, thank you for calling.
Hi, Maddie.
Hi, thank you both for taking my call. I am very worried that we're going to have a national abortion ban before we have a national gun ban or do anything about these guns.
Maddie, that's a very sobering point. I hope you're wrong about the abortion ban, because I think a lot of Republicans got very nervous backtracked after the midterms when they saw states like Kentucky and Michigan voters there saying they did not want these strict bans. But you could be right. You could be right. I don't know. But thank you very much for the call. It's a sobering thought. Okay, here's a email, an unsigned, but a text I should say. At one time we didn't think we could defeat the tobacco lobby, but we did. A few years ago, smoking was cool. Public and private campaign changed laws and public opinion. Remember the Marlboro Man talking through a device? Oh God, I do remember that. Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah, he was the guy that did all the Marlboro commercials. He was like a big, tough cowboy. And then I think he had lung cancer, didn't he? Or he had some kind of tracheotomy
something like that. Yeah,
something.
Yeah. Not the image he was in those ads, that's for sure, at the end of his life.
Anyway, this texter points out it took a long time, but we did it. WMDs can be eliminated. We just need to make it happen. It's all about courage and attitude. That goes to your point about climate change, because heaven knows the fossil fuel industry is funding a lot of people's campaigns too, and they're very, very powerful. We had made some inroads. Again, that's younger people. We had David Hogg on the show, and people may remember he's one of the leaders that came out of the Parkland shooting massacre down in Florida, and he's now at Harvard, and he is such an impressive young man. We had him on the show, and we asked him what the solution was, and he said, well, we have to wait till older people like you are dead.
Well, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I think there's some truth to that, because there are so many people who are so resistant, but we are starting to see that change. I mean, I hate to agree with it's such a grim diagnosis about how the change has to come, but I do see a path forward. Do you see one at all? Or are you so cynical at this point? I mean, we are, after seeing the school shootings and not seeing any change. I mean, I still can't believe that after Newtown we nothing
Yeah.
changed in this country. I mean,
And then Uvalde, those kids were only a few years older, right?
right.
And those kids were calling from on their cell phones from the schoolroom where they were surrounded by dead and dying
And
classmates.
to see that horrible video of cops just standing there, and you know the murderous rampage that was
and
happening.
they're armed to the teeth
Right.
with all their long
Right.
guns. Jillian in Haverhill, thanks for calling.
Jillian?
Hi, long-time listener, guys.
Thanks.
I just wanted to bring up something that I've been hearing more and more from other parents from their elementary school kids. They're afraid to go to the bathroom during school because they're afraid if there's a shooter, they're going to get locked out of their classroom.
Oh my God.
So I think that's really, something that people need to know more about because that's starting to happen. And, what do you do with kids that have to go to the bathroom, but they're afraid to go?
Yeah, and you can't shield them from this. You can't keep them away from the news. There are the gun training lessons that happened in schools, so this is part of their life.
Right? So just go to the bathroom, I might lose my life because I get locked out of my classroom and I'm out in the hallway with the shooter. Just a really terrible
Yeah,
thing.
Jillian, thank you for that call. There is a big racial breakdown, too, in terms of who wants what in terms of gun control. African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans are much more likely to want serious gun control than white Americans. I mentioned before the political divide. Many more Democrats and Republicans, I mean Democrats and independents want gun control rather than Latinos. Young people, as Jillian just underscored, are much more concerned about this than older people. Makes sense. They've grown up with this kind of violence in their lives. In a midterm election poll, 17% of voters identified mass shootings and gun policy as one of their top priorities. 6 among all priorities mentioned by voters, coming in higher than education and immigration, which is a big deal because the GOP talks about people's concern about immigration being at the top of the list. Well, in this poll, at least, it's not on the top of the list. Even among Republicans, mass shootings are causing people more concern.
Well, and what's one of the results of that concern? People see more of these happening and feel that they need to have a gun in their home or maybe even in states where it's allowed on their person. So that's one of the reactions to this. So there are so many layers to this to try to move beyond it. And yeah, obviously none of it is easy and is going to take years and years.
Don in Arlington, thanks for calling.
Hey, how are you? I've got so many things running around in my head. I'm having a hard time being concise. But I just want to say that the biggest problem we have, I am a pro-gun rights person. The biggest problem we have is that we're not even having honest, intellectually honest discussions. Marjorie, you bring up the point that there's low crime in Massachusetts and we have very strict gun laws. But yet, if you look to New Hampshire and Maine, you see states with essentially no gun laws and similarly low crime. So it's not that simple. It's a complex thing. There's a societal element to it. Any of the firearms that are in use today have been in use for decades. So why are there more mass shootings? It's not the hardware. It's something societal.
Well, Don, you know we banned assault weapons for quite a chunk of time there, and we did have.
Okay, but Marjorie, do you know what the assault weapon ban did, though? It just prohibited cosmetic features.
Well, let me ask you something, Don. How do you feel about high-capacity magazines?
Okay. So, Marjorie, you've just risen to a very high level in my brain in this discussion because whenever I have the discussion with people about assault weapons, we hash it through, and what we always end up coming to, even my most liberal friends come to the realization that there's no point in an assault weapons ban, but that we can because there really is no functionally such thing as an assault weapon, but an anti-gun person can make a logical argument for magazine capacity limits. I happen to not agree with it, but it's at least a reasonable conversation to have.
Well, I mean, that would be a start. And, we always get into these semantical things, and I am not a gun expert, Don. I don't pretend to be. But I do know that there are certain guns that can kill an awful lot of people really quickly, and that's what we're having in these mass shootings. People go in with these guns, and they massacre people in like 2 minutes. And so part of that's the magazine, part of that's the kind of gun they're using, too. So I guess that's my issue. And when I hear people say, well, it's really fun to go to the gun range and use these things, or I think to myself, at the expense of what? You're fun at the expense of children afraid to go to the bathroom, as the previous caller said?
It's not just about fun. And again, I want to be intellectually honest about this. So the things that enable a mass shooter to be effective and deadly are two things. One, a semi-automatic action, and two, a detachable magazine. That lets them continue to shoot for a while. The fact of the matter is that 80% of all the firearms sold in this country are semi-automatic with a detachable magazine. The handgun that a cop carries meets that definition. The target rifle that the Boy Scouts use does that, functions that way. They are the most common firearms in use.
Okay, so what's your idea? Do you have an idea what we should do about this, Don, to wrap this up?
I'd love to wrap it up. I think primarily we're having a societal crisis, and we need to understand why all these primarily young men want to go out and do this, because they didn't want to do this 50 years ago. But I can tell you that banning the hardware isn't going to change anything, because there will always be other hardware.
In that we're too far gone, because I understand what you're saying about New Hampshire and some other regions well, let me just finish, please, in New Hampshire and other, but you also try to reconcile that with places like Europe, where, yes, there have been these incidents, but they're not nearly as prevalent as we have here in the United States.
Yes, but, it's interesting. Michael Moore did a documentary years ago about Detroit, Michigan, and whatever the city is just across the border in Canada. And there's an easy flow of guns between those two cities, but yet the Canadian culture is such that the murder rate in the sister city is orders of magnitude lower than it was in Chicago or something.
But hold on, Don. This has been a great call, and I'm really glad you called. But one of the problems is the ease with which you can get a gun. Red flag laws are very controversial. I happen to think if you show signs of mental illness, you probably shouldn't be able to get a gun. Background checks are a controversial issue. I happen to think there's nothing wrong with a 7-day background check, and 90-some% of Americans think that would be a good idea. Those are kind of common sense regulations. So how about those? And then we got to go because we get a lot of calls.
No, so the problem with red flag laws has nothing to do with firearms. It has to do with the Fourth Amendment due process right.
Well, it's preventing you from getting a gun or keeping a gun. Keeping a gun.
Red flag laws deprive you of due process.
Yeah,
Somebody can petition the court to take your guns, and you don't get.
Okay, how about background checks? How about that, Don?
Background checks. Yeah. Background checks are already in place for everyone who buys from a dealer.
Yeah, but that's the problem, Don, as you well know. Up in New Hampshire, as you well know, you can buy whatever you want.
Yeah, and I saw that happen this summer. I will tell you, I was at a flea market.
Great call, Don. We got to go.
I saw a gun exchange happening in the trees among 3 men. I'm not. It's not a joke. I saw this happen next to a stand, and so you can make the distinction, dealers. But as the caller was saying, the guns are already out there.
The guns are already out there. Okay, that was a great call, though. I appreciate it very much.
All right, well, stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back talking about the increasing escalation of gun violence in this country.
When we say we're public media, you're the public we're talking about.
Bill in Cambridge, you first on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for your call. Hi.
Hi. We're all about what matters to you.
My comment, in addition to all the great points you guys made.
This is community in practice.
Margot from New Hampshire, thank you for calling.
Hey, Margot.
Hi.
Margot, I don't know if you're...
Public media that serves your community. GBH News with NPR. Online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Newbury Court, a full-service residential community in Concord, Massachusetts for persons 62 or over, committed to creating an active, independent lifestyle. More at newburycourt.org or 978-369-5155. And Comcast, committing $1 billion to help provide people with the skills, resources, and opportunities they need to succeed in a digital world. Comcast Project Up, building a future of unlimited possibilities. Comcast.com/Project Up.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday, and we are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. And if you were just tuning in, we're talking about gun violence in America. There have been almost 40 mass shootings so far in 2023. We are in a big roll. A lot of it has increased post the pandemic, by the way. The pandemic made things worse, according to the Gun Violence Archive. That is. So should we be outraged? Should we be taking action? We've taken action, been outraged and protested so many times before. Will any meaningful change ever come on guns in America? Give us a call, 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. By the way, the gentleman who called before, Don from New Hampshire, was mentioning red flag laws. I should have said those are laws that allow a court to decide someone is dangerous and their gun should be taken away from them temporarily. He was talking about, his concerned about due process, and I get that, but you got to weigh these things. And I think if someone is deemed dangerous, there's obviously the due process consideration is serious. But if a judge says someone is dangerous and you're temporarily removing the weapon, I'd be willing to balance those two things to get a gun away from someone.
Although he also says something, that, and this is where my optimism completely ends, where there are so many guns out there. I'd actually forgotten what I saw this summer when I was, again, at this flea market. And I saw this basic gun deal go down among these trees in the back of this flea market in the woods of New Hampshire. And then you recognize that anybody probably who wants to get a gun will find the means to do that. We have a text, continuing this thread from the firearms advocates. This is from Emily. She's a firearms advocate. I'm even a bigger firearms safety advocate. I agree we need a legislative overhaul in this country, but why isn't education part of this conversation? The right to bear arms is the Second Amendment, and our government makes no effort to educate our citizens on how to be responsible gun owners and how to use a firearm.
And when you talked about Europe before, I mean, a lot of politicians like to blame mental health issues, but the whole world has mental health issues. Only the United States has this level of violence. I think we're like a little bit above Nicaragua or something in terms of gun ownership. Do we really want to compare ourselves to them? Astrid and Gloucester, what do you think?
Hi, Astrid.
Hello. Well, thank you, Marjorie, for making making a point for me. The Finns have a ton of guns. They're not killing anybody, and they don't talk out about anything.
Yeah.
You can't get one word out of a Finn. But my real point is this. Don from New Hampshire, he has this whole thing about this, cosmetic fix would not have stopped X, Y, or Z mass shooting. And mass shootings are horrible. They're a form of domestic terrorism. However, the biggest problem with mass shootings is the fact that if you have a gun in your house, or I shouldn't say mass shootings, gun violence, is that gun is more likely to kill you. The mass shootings really aren't the biggest problems in terms of gun deaths. The guns are the problem. And frankly, I think that instead of buying a billboard on the Mass Pike saying end gun violence, let's take that money and start buying guns and then putting them in the smelter.
Yeah, well,
if I ever won the lottery, I'd have to play the lottery, but if I ever won the lottery, I would take all of that money, I would buy the guns, and I would put them in the smelter.
Astrid,
and then that's the way, because they're there, let's get rid of them.
Astrid, thank you for the call. I mean, I don't know if that maybe a pie in the sky.
Yeah, and there have been gun buyback programs, of course,
yep,
in different
certainly
municipalities.
In Boston. Yep, I mean, Astrid's right about the guns in the home, and we see this crazy story about this 6-year-old that brought his mother's gun to school and shot his teacher, and then we saw these pictures on the news of this toddler walking around the apartment with this gun while the parent was sitting there oblivious, and the cops came in and arrested him for having a gun in the house. But the thing about mass shootings is this is all foisted upon you. You can be a person that's anti-gun. There are no guns in your house, but your kid is going to school, or your kid is going to the movies, or you're going to go to the mall. That the gun culture is foisted upon people who have no choice about it, and that's what's kind of distressing. Somebody just texted and said it's gotten to the point where guns have more rights in America than women do.
Perhaps not unsure. Let's go to Paul calling from Norfolk, Virginia. Hi, Paul.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I was calling just to address kind of what I consider one gray area is we often view this argument in terms of life and death, or they survived, or they didn't. But in the middle, there's a lot of disability caused by gunshot wounds.
Great
I
point.
speak to that from a personal standpoint. I was shot in Vermont 3 times. The first time, which paralyzed me through a door, and I've been injured for 44 years. I've been paralyzed with a spinal cord injury. And the cost and quality of life, and not to mention the impact on family, friends, etc. I was involved in nothing illegal. I was a cheesemaker. But anyway, it's just, you see Gabby Gifford's traumatic brain injuries. I worked for a disability agency for years until I had to stop working because of my disability. And I know I've become a burden on society, and that's my choice in terms of Medicare costs, various health. So anyway, there are a lot of people. I live now in Norfolk, Virginia, and our gun laws are just almost non-existent. Open carry, unlimited purchases, no, I guess, a background check, but then the gun show, as you'll address very well.
Hey, Paul, we are out of time, but I thank you for making a very important point, because I think we think that 10 are dead and 7 are injured, and sometimes some of the 7 are going to be okay. But as you point out, you could be paralyzed for your life. You could be endure tremendous medical costs and emotional costs, and we forget about that they were the collateral damage to these killings are many people injured, and sometimes they're lifelong injuries. Paul, thank you very much for the call.
Right, thank you very much. Well, thank you for everyone who called and texted today. NBC Sports Boston's Trenny Casey is next, talking about the young bumper crop of quarterbacks who have arrived. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
A cigarette butt is tiny, but in Spain it is a huge problem. Hundreds of tons of butts are collected from streets, plazas, and especially those white sandy beaches. Spanish lawmakers want tobacco companies and smokers to pay for the cleanup. There are plans to tax each cigarette, and there are hopes for a recycling program. Spain's problem with cigarette butts, it's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Eversource, committed to helping your business reach its sustainability goals. You can learn more about custom recommendations to help reduce your carbon footprint and lessen your environmental impact at eversource.com. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, the Commonwealth's flagship public university. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim Browdy has the day off. Jared Bowen, Executive Arts Editor here at GBH, is filling in. Hello again, Jared.
Hello again, Marjorie.
And we are joined now by Trenny Casey, author reporter for NBC Sports Boston, who is also a BPR contributor. Hello, Trenny.
Hello, Marjorie. Hello, Jared. Oh, look at this.
Yeah, there we go.
Nice.
Applause for Trenny.
One of these days I'll wear makeup for all these nice people.
You don't need,
look up.
You don't need makeup, Trenny. You're looking fine. So let's start with some sound from the unfortunate reception that the Red Sox honchos.
Is it unfortunate? Is it?
Oh, well, okay. Well, you tell us in a second. But we're going to play people the sound in case they didn't hear it. The Red Sox hosted this winter weekend a few days ago, marking the official or the unofficial beginning of the season. It was in Springfield. I featured a panel with team owner John Henry, and he was not a welcome presence. Here he is responding to a question about why the team is charging some of the highest ticket prices in the league when they aren't exactly one of the top spenders on players this year.
I think the most informed thing I can say is that it's expensive to have baseball players. To have the best.
So
wow.
Okay, so I guess
what did he think was going to happen when he said that?
Yeah, they booed him. They booed some of the other guys up there. So they've had it, the Red Sox fans.
If Santa Claus would have walked up there, they would have booed Santa. Like, Red Sox fans are mad, and they rightfully so are angry. Like, for John Henry to get up there, a team, by the way, that has the money, the television rights, the ticket prices of the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Chicago Cubs, all teams, by the way, who are spending money on their players. Now, in the Red Sox defense, they did just give Rafael Devers one of the biggest contracts in league history. I believe it was 10 years, $365 million. But
wow.
But that's like, I hate to say this, but that's like going market value for a player of Devers' age and ability. And unlike some of the other players who got similar contracts, Devers at least will still be in his 30s when those 10 years are up. So the Red Sox, they did not re-sign Mookie Betts a few years ago. They were not in on major free agent players this offseason. Actually, I shouldn't say that. They were in on a lot of guys, but they were never really in on any guys. They didn't keep Xander Bogaerts. People are upset about that. So 2 of your 3 homegrown players that other teams like, I don't know, the New York Yankees have managed to keep around, you are shipping off somewhere else. Right now, that according to like the power rankings, and this is power rankings that Major League Baseball puts out. This isn't just like some fans throwing things together. The Red Sox are in the bottom half of the league. They're like 26th or something. All of the other teams in the American League East, the Orioles, who don't have very much money, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Yankees, they're all 11th or higher. So it's expected that they're once again going to be the worst team in their division with one of the wealthiest owners like this. And I think what also frustrates people, I almost called you Jim, Jared and Marjorie, is the fact that it's not like John Henry. They feel like the Red Sox are not his primary concern anymore. So he owns Liverpool in the Premier League in England. He has bought the Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL. He is looking to buy an NBA team. He's brought on LeBron James to be part of Fenway Sports Group. So he's investing in all of these entities, and it feels like they're not investing back in the team that made them a ton of money by winning. And it's because of them that they won 3 World Series in 04, 13, and 18. But, this is a what have you done for me lately league.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is true that you used to be able to get really cheap Red Sox tickets before they came into town because they were losing so much of the time. And then they did a lot of like improvements, right?
Yes.
To the stadium and so things.
For an old stadium, it's updated as much as it possibly can be. And I mean, again, I just think it comes back to after they won in 2018, they had Dave Dombrowski as their I guess they don't call him a general manager, they call him like chief baseball operating officer or something, or whatever it is. And he was a freewheeling spender. He had no problem getting rid of prospects, which a lot of people will say prospects is just another way of saying hasn't done anything yet. Like maybe they'll be good for big league players and handing out big contracts. And sometimes those contracts, don't look good at the end of the day. But he wasn't afraid to spend money. And then when they fired Dave Dombrowski, they went in the complete opposite direction, and they brought in Chaim Bloom from the Tampa Bay Rays, a guy who is known for penny pinching and finding diamonds in the rough, but he hasn't really done that.
We get some sound. Why not torture these poor guys a little bit more? As you say, most of the rancor was directed toward John Henry, the owner, but Chaim Bloom got his share too. Here's what the sound of a fan calling for the team to bring back the aforementioned Dave Dombrowski. Here it is.
Last time I was sitting up here was 3 years ago.
So where was the organization 3 years ago? Organization was coming off an 84-win season. That team had shown in 2019 had good players, but the team wasn't good enough.
You know, why do they subject themselves to this? What is this deal, this winter weekend
This
deal?
is like
They-
the French Revolution happening
Exactly.
here.
So, but it's not. So I haven't done one of these in a while, but I've done them before. Usually they're happy-go-lucky events where like you go up there and you ask them some fluffy questions about, like, are there going to be new foods at the concession stands? Wow, you signed Rafael Devers. This is so exciting. But the fans are fed up, and I don't blame fans for being fed up. This is a team that is one of the biggest markets in all of sports. You also are in a market where the Celtics are the best team in the NBA.
Yep.
The Bruins
I
are
know.
the best team
Loving
in the
those
NHL.
Celtics.
And when the who knows what's going to happen with the Patriots? But when the Patriots have a couple of years where they're not good, Robert Kraft sends out a message to everyone and says, "We're getting a new offensive coordinator. We're keeping Gerard Mayo. I'm not going to stand for this. This is not the kind of team we're going to have." And the Red Sox are like, ooh, but we went and got Adam Duvall, who broke his wrist last year, but he might be good, everybody. He might be good.
All right, well, let's move on to something that is really fun to talk about.
It is.
People not getting booed, well, except for, Tom. Everybody loves Tom Brady.
Do they?
But he's moved on. Aaron Rodgers kind of moved on because now we have this new young bumper crop of quarterbacks who are already stars, who we're going to be seeing a lot of over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, usually, you turn on championship weekend in the NFL and you almost always see Tom Brady and or Aaron Rodgers still playing. This year in the Final Four in the NFL, every single player is under the age of 30. Every single one.
Young guns.
Young guns. Brock Purdy is the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. He's like 23 years old. He was the last pick in the NFL draft, which I think this is kind of mean that they still do this, but they call that pick in the draft Mr. Irrelevant. Because usually you don't ever see the field. Like you don't even really have a chance. Like an undrafted rookie free agent a lot of times has a better chance of making a team. But because their two quarterbacks got injured, Brock Purdy's been thrust into the spotlight and he's taken them to the Super Bowl, to the NFC Championship game, which is pretty incredible.
That's kind of like Tom Brady of years ago, right?
Tom Brady of years ago. You've got Jalen Hurts, you have Joe Burrow, and you have
Patrick Mahomes,
How can I
who
forget
seems
Patrick
like
Mahomes?
such a nice guy.
Right?
I even love to watch his ads.
I know.
He's very charming, isn't he?
He is. I would say, though, that the best quarterback in this crop is Joe Burrow. Many people, at least a fair amount, are comparing him and the way he plays the game to Tom Brady.
Is that right?
They're saying he sees the field the same way, that that he's smart like Brady is, that he has the touch and the arm strength. Like he doesn't have the athleticism of a Patrick Mahomes. Like he can't do those dynamic running plays, but that he's such a good all-around quarterback. So keep an eye on him. And Mahomes is hurt.
Mahomes limps off the field with a sprained ankle. Then he limps back on the field to win the game, right?
Well, we had a little laugh yesterday at work because we do these show emails. I think I've talked about before. We kind of go through the topics we want to talk about every day. And one of my very funny producers, Jeff Capitasto, put Patrick Mahomes after spraining a high ankle sprain, and it's him looking gritty on the field and going for a throw. And then he attached a picture of Mac Jones after he got a high ankle sprain, and his face is crunched up in pain, and he's screaming in agony. One guy's like, "Put some dirt on it. I'm going back out there to play," and then Mac Jones is like,
It's all a little performance art, isn't it? All those faces.
I don't know.
There's drama that's created on the field. Come on.
Was that the kind of drama you'd want to create if you're the leader of the team? No, the juxtaposition was quite
when it
interesting.
ends with you coming back onto the field, yeah.
Okay,
But
so
he didn't. Mac Jones didn't.
No, not Mac Jones.
we cannot end a session with you, Trini, without asking: is Brady coming back after that very kind of sad last performance? Or
I don't know. He was pretty vulgar with Jim Gray on his podcast about whether or not he's going to come back. He used the F-bomb twice.
He did?
Yes. And he said, if I've made up my bleeping mind, I would bleeping tell you. So we don't know. I was like, easy. I was like, easy, buddy. We wouldn't be having this conversation if you weren't old. You're middle-aged. You're a middle-aged man. And I can say this because we're the same age. You're this middle-aged man, and you're still playing football. Like, what are we just supposed to assume you aren't coming back? Like, you created this drama. You retired last year, and then you unretired. And then you were sad sack Eeyore all year at the podium. And then, when you're saying goodbyes when you're leaving Tampa. But, oh, no, how dare we ask if you're going to come back? Like, I feel about him the same way I feel about Harry and Meghan. If you don't want attention, then don't do all of these things to get attention. If you don't want to be in the spotlight anymore, walk away. You have tens, probably hundreds of millions of dollars. No one is forcing you to do this anymore.
Well, he's not on the planet anymore. We can acknowledge that, right? He's just floated away. And
Tom Brady is not on planet Earth. He is not. Well, I mean, part of the reason he's floating away is because he's got so much fillers in his face.
I know. It's a little too much. You can't go too crazy. You have to go on the side of
everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation. We should point out, though, that I think Harry's The Spare book is still like the biggest selling book of all.
Apparently, here I read there's like 3,800 holds on it at this library, at the Boston Public Library. Like, you cannot get it.
Cannot get enough of The Spare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have no interest.
Well, neither do I at all.
At all. Every time we watch a lot of things on Netflix, and anytime it comes up, I'm like, Netflix, what would make you think? We watch true crime murder documentaries all the time. Like, what would make you think we want to watch this? I'm like, is there a way to just delete it and never have to see it?
Oh, if I find out, I'll share that because I agree. Although I once watched The Crown, so I figured that's why it's sitting there staring at me.
Yeah, I watched
The Crown is like a dramatization, and it's well acted. It's different. It's different.
Tell me your favorite true crime drama. Need a suggestion.
Well, we watched the Bernie Madoff one recently.
That was a good one.
That one was really good.
Okay.
We also, this isn't true crime. This is just super interesting. And all of us would probably sort of remember this. Do you guys remember have you seen Pepsi, Where's My Jet? So there's a Pepsi truck going by right now, coincidentally. So really quickly, I know this isn't a sports story. So back in the 90s, Pepsi ran this advertisement where you could drink Pepsi, get stuff, was like their tagline. And so you could get like sunglasses, t-shirts, and a leather jacket. But at the end, this kid comes down in a Harrier jet, which is a military jet, and it said 7 million Pepsi points. But there was no disclaimer. So it didn't say like, ha, just kidding, anything like that. And so this 20-year-old kid living in Seattle was like, how do I get this Harrier jet? This would be so cool. He actually put together a business plan of what he would do once he got the Harrier jet. And he was a guide on mountains, and he recruited this wealthy guy, and he found a loophole that if you couldn't drink enough Pepsi, you could buy Pepsi points for 10 cents each. So 10 cents times 7 million was like $700,085 or something for this Harrier jet. And so they sent the check in to Pepsi asking for it. And when Pepsi wouldn't give it to him, it went to court. And now it's a court case that's actually taught in many law schools about contract law. And what kills me is they didn't get a very friendly judge when it did finally go in front of the Southern District of New York. And so it's super interesting. But it's also I grew up in the 90s like I did, the pop culture, the music, everything that's happening in the show is really good. And it's only 4 episodes, and each episode's under an hour.
Thank you very much. I'm always looking for new recommendations.
Pepsi, Where's My Jet?
So let's move on to this.
The Jeffrey Dahmer one's actually pretty good too. But don't watch the scripted one. That one's too creepy and graphic. But the actual documentary of what happened there, I think it's called the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes, is actually quite fascinating.
No, I think nothing like a Friday night.
And it's actually fascinating for me.
Deep in cannibalism.
Well, but you don't get too deep into that. Dinner. It's more and again, for me, it was interesting having grown up, and I was in high school. I was I don't know, maybe a freshman in high school or something when Dahmer was arrested. To go back and see, I saw reporters that I watched on TV growing up, and you just see how they pieced it together. And how many times they missed things when people complained about him and complained about what was going on in the building. It's a fascinating look at how this white man living in a predominantly black area was given, that's like another sort of side to it, how he was sort of
Privilege.
given special dispensation,
Yeah.
like, can't be anything really wrong going on.
Okay, we have to get back to the world, from cannibalism to the world of sports. So
Hey, you asked.
So I did ask. That's right. It's my fault. So this is a great story about this surfing competition, and it's these huge waves out in Hawaii. And there's a graph in this story that talks about how there are many ways to wipe out on a 50-foot wave.
Yes.
You can go airborne immediately, trying to stand, but instead plummeting like from a fourth-floor balcony. You can navigate a steep vertical drop only to be consumed by a wall of white water sucking you into the world's most turbulent washing machine. They just talk about the way these guys and gals now can wipe out on these waves. So tell us about this competition.
So it's a competition that can only be held when they're big enough waves, and it's named after, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the guy's name because I know I'll screw it up, but it's named after a lifeguard on the North Beach in Oahu. He was an avid surfer, but he also gave back to the community and like would win surfing competitions and stuff like that. And he actually died because he had gone out on this traditional Polynesian like rowing.
Yeah, in a canoe.
In a canoe expedition. I don't know if any of you have seen White Lotus, but they do this actually in the first season of White Lotus.
Loved White Lotus.
So good.
Speaking of which,
Jennifer Coolidge,
Hasty Pudding
Woman
of the Year.
She is?
Yep.
Local girl.
Parade
She's
through
great.
Harvard Square, February 4th.
Oh, I want to go.
She's such a
Right.
hot ticket.
That sounded
is
a
so
little
fun.
like Jennifer Coolidge.
Yeah, she mispronounces everything, and I can relate to that.
She's so great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he went on this, and they got stuck. Like there was a storm, and they couldn't get back. And to try and save everyone else on the boat, he took his surfboard out of the canoe and tried to paddle back for help, and was never seen again. And so now they have this surf competition, but the waves have to be just right and big enough. They have to be 50 feet or higher. And so for the first time in 7 years this year, they had the opportunity to hold this competition. My niece was there because it's my husband's niece, but now my niece by marriage, and she's out there because she's like 24 and hanging out in Hawaii for a month because that's what 24-year-olds I guess get to do. And she said that in order to get seats on the beach, they camped out overnight and were like there like 4:30 in the morning, like the day before, and spent all day on this beach because it's such a big deal. And she said it was incredible. But the best part about it is all these professional surfers, all these big time guys, and the guy who won is a North Beach Oahu lifeguard who in between runs on these 50-foot waves would go back and be a lifeguard. So in between, he'd go back and sit in his tower and like look out and try to help rescue people, and then he'd come back and he'd surf his heat, and then he'd go back up to work. And as soon as he won, he like went back to work. But it's sort of it's all, what was great about that and why I love the story is because it's all in the spirit of the event that
Right.
the person who was actually named after. Is that here's something helping people and a surfer.
Eddie Aiku, I think it is.
Eddie Aiku, yes. And the guy who won it
I'm
is
probably
like
wrong. AIKAU.
Yeah.
And
The guy that's why I didn't want to say it, 'cause I
already
figured
one
I
of the
would
best
screw it up.
pictures of the year, him being hoisted
Sit
up.
up, yes.
Everybody is so happy for him.
And everybody else is
Jefferson.
in like wetsuits and like surfer gear, and he's in like red lifeguard shorts and a yellow lifeguard T-shirt, and he won the whole thing.
Yeah,
It's really great.
We're not going to have time to talk about the Australian Open, but let's just say very quickly before we go,
Two
the
Americans
American men
in
are doing very well.
Yes, Tommy Paul and Ben Shelton playing each other in the quarterfinals, first time since 2003, I believe. 2003, 2004, that American men have been in the quarterfinals of the Australian.
So why is that? We're just better players this time around?
Yeah, it's finally that we sort of replenished. Also, news I think I sent too late this morning for you guys probably to see. Bill O'Brien has been named the Patriots' new offensive coordinator.
Oh, and why is that a big deal?
Well, because Matt Patricia, who was a defensive coordinator, was their offensive coordinator last year, and the team stunk. So they absolutely needed a new offensive coordinator, and Bill O'Brien has been hired. He's been here before. It wasn't really a surprise. Everybody thought that he would get
that's key,
it.
right? He has to have some kind of relationship with Bill Belichick.
Yes. Pretty much if you want to work for Bill, you have to be an as we call him in the media, an FOB, a friend of Bill.
Okay, and does this undercut Bill's brilliance because he didn't have this guy last year?
It was a mistake on his part because if he would have just asked him to leave Alabama last year, he probably would have come up here and done it. And then instead he wasted a year of Mac Jones's time in the league and instead had him coached by a defensive guy. Which just doesn't work.
Is Mac Jones going to survive?
I don't know. We will see. That to me is the biggest storyline. Does Mac Jones survive this?
Perfect ending to a podcast tease.
Yes.
Who's the other guy?
Next time.
Happy Zappy?
Bailey Zappi?
That's the understudy.
Or Happy Zappy.
He could be back. Happy Zappy could be
Maybe.
in number one position. Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trenny.
We've been speaking with Trenny Casey, podcast expert and also sports expert at NBC Sports Boston. She's a BPR contributor. Coming up, Boston Globe columnist Marcela Garcia joins us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming now on youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 80.
Support for GBH comes from you and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. You can start the new year by joining their team of professionals dedicated to advancing ocean science and technology. Learn more about openings at whoi.edu/team. Join pop icon Cyndi Lauper and actors Jamie Chung and Danny Trejo as they uncover ancestors whose stories were lost when their families immigrated to America on a new Finding Your Roots, tonight at 8 on GBH2.
I'm Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Marjorie Egan. Ahead on Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, former Trump spokesperson and now governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, has banned the use of the term Latinx from state government. Boston Globe columnist Marcela Garcia has thoughts on that and more. She'll join us. Then it's GBH's Jennifer McKim, who's done some great reporting on labor trafficking. She'll join us on what is and is not being done to curtail low-wage, high-violation jobs in the state's hospitality industry.
I'm Jared Bowen, in for Jim Browdy. Marjorie and I are starting to sweat. High school quiz show host Billy Costa will be joining us ahead of the latest season of the show. And yes, we'll be quizzed. Maybe we can stump Billy, too, with some news questions. After that, what science says about siblings who have nothing in common. Can you relate? We'll open up the phone and text lines at 877-301-8970. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. California authorities are investigating 2 more mass shootings since Saturday. In one of them last night, a gunman killed 7 farm workers and wounded another in the coastal city of Half Moon Bay, south of San Francisco. As NPR's Eric Westervelt reports, police have arrested the gunman but still don't know the motive.
San Mateo County Sheriff Christina Corpus says 7 people believed to be farm workers were allegedly gunned down by 67-year-old Chun-Li Zhao, a local resident who also apparently worked at the mushroom farm. He drove himself to a police substation where he was arrested without incident. Corpus says Zhao acted alone. A semi-automatic handgun was found in his car. David Pine heads the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors.
Our hearts are broken. We are deeply grateful for law enforcement for their work this evening. But in the end, there are simply too many guns in this country, and there has to be a change.
The Half Moon Bay killings follow the mass shooting at a Southern California dance hall over the weekend where 11 people were killed. Eric Westervelt, NPR News.
The shooting stoked fear in Asian American communities that have already been grappling with a rise in anti-Asian discrimination during the pandemic. But today, actors and filmmakers of Asian descent are being lauded. Michelle Yeoh has made history as the first actor to identify as Asian to be nominated for a leading role Oscar. NPR's Mandalit Del Barco has more.
Michelle Yeoh, who was born in Malaysia, stars as a woman who traverses the multiverse in the film Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I am paying attention.
The film earned 11 Oscars nominations, including Best Picture, Director, and Supporting Actor.
Lift me up.
Actress Angela Bassett, who stars in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, also made history as the first actor from the Marvel Universe to be nominated for an Academy Award. The film did not get nominated as Best Picture, but picked up 5 nods, including its original song by Rihanna. The winners will be celebrated on March 12th. Mandalit Del Barco, NPR News.
A judge in Atlanta is hearing arguments on whether to release a special grand jury's report on former President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. WABE's Sam Greenglass reports.
1 year ago, Fulton County prosecutor Fani Willis asked a judge to impanel a special grand jury. The probe was spurred in part by Trump's call to Georgia's Secretary of State, pressuring him to, quote, find 11,780 votes. It's also examined plans to organize a fake slate of electors for Trump and other attempts to interfere with the election. The special grand jury's final report may include recommendations for criminal charges, but Willis would still need to ask a standing grand jury to bring any indictments. For NPR News, I'm Sam Greenglass in Atlanta.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline today. State environmental and health officials visited the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station recently. Seth Pickering of the Department of Environmental Protection says they viewed areas of that plant where water samples will be drawn for testing.
Sampling is going to occur at 3 different locations: the spent fuel pool, the separated dryer pit, and the Taurus. Holtec has provided a draft sampling protocol, and the protocol will be finalized before the actual sampling events take place.
A lab in Colorado called Eurofins will test for non-radioactive pollutants. Pickering also says the 2 state offices are examining how the Ocean Sanctuaries Act could apply to the potential discharge of radioactive water from Pilgrim. The Lego toy company has announced today that it's moving its America's headquarters from Connecticut to Boston. According to a news release from this morning, the company, which employs about 2,600 people in the United States, will complete the move by the end of 2026. Company officials say the move to Boston's Back Bay neighborhood will happen in phases beginning in 2025, and all of the workers in the Connecticut plant will be offered jobs at the new Boston location. I once built a hospital out of Legos. It specialized in plastic surgery. In sports, the Bruins are in Montreal tonight. The Celtics are at Miami. And according to a source at the NFL, the Patriots are about to name Bill O'Brien as their new offensive coordinator. He's been here before. 38 degrees in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I am Marjorie Egan. Jim Browdy has the day off. Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen is filling in. Hello again, Jared.
Hi, Marjorie.
We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday, and we are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. And joining us now is Marcela Garcia. She's Associate Editor and columnist for the Boston Globe. Hello, Marcela.
Hello
Thank
again.
you very much for coming in. So you wrote a great column about the controversy surrounding the term Latinx.
Yes.
Tell us what you said, because I think a lot of us are very confused about Latinx.
I should probably begin by explaining why there is such a controversy about Latinx. Latinx is a more inclusive term for people who are Latino or Hispanic. It sort of started as a movement from younger people to be inclusive, right? Gender identity, to be more gender inclusive. But the problem is that it's always been controversy among, older Latinos and Hispanics who don't get the X at the end, right? And it has to do with the language, the Spanish language, that having an X at the end doesn't make sense. And also, Spanish is a very gendered language. And so trust me, I don't understand the hatred that there is against this term among some Latinos and Hispanic, and rejected entirely. So there have been million polls that say people don't use Latinx, they don't like it, etc. And then all of a sudden, there is always a controversy around Latinx. More and more people are using it, and again, it's usually younger people. I honestly don't care, as long as you want to, you tell me what you want to be called, I will be respectful of that. Fast forward to earlier this month when the new governor of Arkansas is being sworn in, as you probably know. Sarah Huckabee, who used
Our
to
favorite.
be favorite press secretary of the Trump administration era, she assumed office as the governor of Arkansas, and in one of her first moves in office, the day she was inaugurated, she signed like 7 executive orders. One of them was to ban the term Latinx from all state government documents and official, records, whatever. Now, nobody was asking for this, right? Obviously, and
we
so,
should mention she did it under the pretense that she was trying to be inclusive and that it was an offensive term.
I mean, typical Republican gaslighting, right? That they're pretending to do something that is something that the community asked, which was obviously not true. And again, the way I argued in my column is that this is just an attempt to sort of deflect from the real issues that actual Latinos in her state are facing. There's nearly 10% of the population in Arkansas is Latino. And so what are you doing to help them other than to ban a term that no one really is asking her for to do? So it's become very politically exploitative to use it, because it's not just Republicans who sort of react to this politically correct term, right? It's also some Democrats who believe that it's progressives and the left liberal Democratic wing that have been calling for these terms, when in reality it was just a very organic thing. And people always point to the fact that no one uses Latinx, only like 5% of Latinos. And I always say, of course, it's a new term. Language takes time to sort of take over, and it's always evolving. Language is always evolving, expanding, and newer generations are always contributing to that. So it was a non-controversy, right? A non-controversy, but I felt compelled to write about it because I wanted to just say how hypocritical it was from someone like Sarah Huckabee to be, wading into this controversy, given her past, as a Trump administration spokesperson.
Well, I wonder if there's been a sort of backlash from people within the community who didn't like the term, but now that they see what's happened, a sudden embrace. I mean, how has it, as you say, it was an organic development, but obviously not organic anymore because there are very concrete, direct conversations about it.
I think people are reacting in the way that, look, if you really cared about Latinos, you would be talking about other more substantive issues like poverty, affordability issues, education. How are we doing in those arenas, rather than wading into a conversation about how we should call themselves, right? So in general, I think most Latinos don't care what other Latinos call themselves, but some prefer Latinx, right?
Well, there's something called the Associated Press style book, which we in the media, and it explains, terms you're supposed to use, not supposed to. And there's always these things about pro-life, pro-choice, anti-abortion rights, for abortion rights, all that kind of stuff. But there's no directive about this.
Well, no, but the Merriam-Webster dictionary added the term Latinx a couple of years ago. Not so there's a similar sort of authority in the Spanish language out of Spain, the Real Academia Española, and people against Latinx always point out that authority has not embraced the term or added it. But that's the Spanish language. We're talking about the U.S. and we're talking about general usage here, where English is the dominant language. And so if Merriam-Webster added it, I guess anybody should feel free to use it in like an official, but I think it's still very debatable.
You can use Latino, Latina, Latinx.
Hispanic. A lot of people don't like Hispanic, by the way, and a lot of people don't like Latino. So it is very interesting. Questions of self-identity are very complicated, right? And so it's always best to ask someone, how do you identify yourself these days?
Do the polite thing and call people what they want to be called, I guess. Okay.
So you have a really, I find, fascinating column today, because obviously we in Massachusetts, and actually nationally, because this Dateline-esque story just blew up out of Cohasset, Massachusetts, and that's the disappearance of Anna Walsh, and then of course the arrest of her husband. The conversations around that turned to the missing white woman syndrome, and you have, not that you're talking about that necessarily, but you have given us an example of a non-white woman who is basically in the same circumstances, has disappeared in the same time frame as Anna Walsh, and nobody is talking about this. Actually, she disappeared slightly before Anna Walsh.
So it was a total surprise to me to find out that this woman, her name is Reina Morales Rojas. She's a 41-year-old immigrant from El Salvador who lived in East Boston, went missing on November 26, the day, or the weekend after Thanksgiving. Her loved ones reported her missing immediately to the East Boston Police Station. But it wasn't until January 12th that the Boston Police Department put out an alert. And this is how normally people find out about missing people, about missing person alerts. Who puts that out? Law enforcement. And so the Boston Police Department waited a whole month, more than a month, to tell the public, hey, this person is missing. Can you help us? Distributing the photo, distributing her whereabouts, saying when she was last seen. Apparently she was last seen being dropped off in Somerville. Nobody else knows anything. There's no other official explanation. I contacted BPD, the Boston Police Department. Why the lag of time? They admitted we could have done this earlier. We could have alerted the public earlier. I asked, is there a protocol? And mind you, I didn't add this into the column because I do want to follow up, and also I wanted to talk about her and the circumstances of her disappearance.
She's got 2 children,
Right, she has 2 children in El Salvador, and so I wanted to focus on her. But to your point about missing white women syndrome, we always talk about missing white women syndrome when white women go missing, but we don't talk about what to do to fight that. And the reality is that it's really up to law enforcement because, I got a lot of feedback from this column from people saying, well, you are the media. Why weren't you talking about this woman before? Why weren't you, looking for her? And the reason why is because nobody knew. And so we in the media take a lot of cues from law enforcement, and we take their information from them. We learn about missing people from them. And so if they're not saying, if they're not alerting it, nobody knew about her disappearance. And again,
but her family had gone to the police. There
is a police report, right?
Because I was so struck that they were acknowledging that this is weird. We're suddenly not hearing from her. All the same circumstances as Hannah Walsh's friends and family.
Well, it took Brian Walsh, I think, 3 days?
3 or 4 days. And in fact, I look back, when did the police alert the public in the case of Hannah Walsh? And again, not to, pit victims against victims. I mean, these are all missing women. We should care about them. In her case, the police took like 3 or 4 days, again, when she was reported missing, to put out the alert almost immediately. And again, to go back to
They did put out the alert almost immediately for Hannah Walsh?
Almost immediately, 3 or 4 days after.
Okay.
Yeah, so she went missing January 1st. By the 4th or the 5th, I think, there was an alert for, about her disappearance. And again, I asked the Boston Police Department, is there a protocol? Like, when do you alert? And again, knowing that every case is different, you cannot maybe publicize a lot of the details of the investigation because it's ongoing. The police always says that. We cannot share all this. Having said all of that, there is no protocol for when to alert the public, and I think that's really the thing here to focus on. How do we demand accountability from police when there are missing people to make sure that we can trust that they are really looking for everyone and not just the missing white women?
Well, it's very interesting. The Amber Alerts are fairly new. They've been around for a while now, but they certainly weren't around when I was a young reporter. And those are the ones where children have been taken. And most of the time, the children are not nabbed by some stranger. They're taken by
members.
Or family members, or, dad is mad at mom, or there's a divorce or a custody thing or something like that. So it's not like they're abducted for nefarious reasons. But we have those all the time now, and you hear them. They even interrupt radio broadcasts, interrupt TV broadcasts to identify the car they were seen in. And you say to yourself, maybe we could have this for grown-ups too.
Yeah, I don't know what the cutoff is because, again, knowing that every case is different, I know that sometimes a lot of people assume like, she went with friends, or she just, eloped with the boyfriend. Like, this is another sexist thing that drives me insane. Around this case of Reina on social media, a lot of people are saying, she probably just went, eloped, or ran away with the boyfriend. and I'm like, what? Would you say that about, any other missing woman? And so I feel like these attitudes, again, there has to be a way to have, a cutoff, a line, right? Like a standard to say, when do we all go public and help, alert the public to help us about a disappearance? Because, sometimes sometimes teens get into an argument with the mom and but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look for them.
So what's happening now? You said your response from the BPD was that they have no policy. How are they looking at this case now? And has there been any acknowledgement of
all they told me is there's a very active investigation, that they're cooperating with a lot of other agencies. So because she was last seen in Somerville, the Middlesex DA, Marion Ryan, is involved too, or has been alerted. They put out a press release too on January 12th. But obviously Suffolk DA too. As far as I know, they have not put out any press release, and the state police as well. The other thing that her sister told me, I spoke to her sister, super, super heartbreaking, and she told me that it wasn't until January 14 that she was interviewed at length by law enforcement. More than 2.5 hours, she said. She was sitting there on a phone call, and she said she was told there were other law enforcement agencies, but it wasn't until January 14 that they did that. It was more than a month after her sister had been reported missing. Calling all the time. She said, I kept calling.
Yeah, that's a very great point, that mom always had her phone on in case there was an emergency with her children, that she could be reached. And now suddenly no one can reach her, which does not, frankly, bode well.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. It's heartbreaking because her family in El Salvador are very, they have a lot of faith. And I hear them very, very optimistic, and it just breaks my heart because, who knows? But again, and to your point about what is the police doing, they assure me that that it's an active investigation, that there are resources, that they care about this, et cetera, et cetera. And the spokesperson kept telling me, I don't want you to think that we're not, that we're not doing this because of her race. And I'm saying, well, look, the proof is in the pudding. Like, you waited a month, and you still haven't told me why you waited a month, to put out the alert. So a lot of questions. And, again, hopefully there will be, a positive outcome.
So we're talking to Marcela Garcia. She's a columnist for the Boston Globe. So Republicans are in charge now in the House, and there's going to be a lot of investigations. And apparently one of their first efforts is going to be impeaching the Secretary of Homeland Security, although it doesn't look as though he's done anything that's impeachable. But
Right.
Tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, just as soon as Republicans took over the House, it was they were already planning this, right? How do we keep Biden, the president, and Democrats accountable for the quote-unquote mess at the border? And so they decided that they're going to, file articles of impeachment on the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, which is Alejandro Mayorkas. And like you said, what are the reasons? Like, one of the things that they're saying is that, well, the Biden administration tried to end Title 42, which is the public health rule that allows the border basically to be closed and allow a lot of people to be deported or expelled immediately, and that has basically suspended asylum processes at the border. And of course, when the Biden administration came in, they waited a long time, but they tried to end Title 42. And so they're blaming Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, for that, even though that's not in his purview. Ending Title 42 is strictly, in the purview of the CDC, because it is a public health rule. And so they're just coming up with excuses. It's only going to, what that tells me is that these moves are only going to make the whole puzzle of immigration more intractable. As if it wasn't already very intractable, they're going to focus on the wrong type of thing. And they're not going to really take care of solving the puzzle of, like, what do we do with dreamers, right? What do we do with our labor shortages that obviously have to do about immigration? How do we reform the asylum seeking process at the border? So there are many, many, many things that they should be focusing on. Instead, they're just, going on these immigration show trials.
I don't know. I don't know how this helps them really, because I think they're not going to get anywhere.
Like I've said before, and like I've told you before here, I think I've said this here before, they're more interested in talking about the problem and keeping it unsolvable. Because they believe that
We have an incident just here at the Boston Public Library, but we'll continue.
We're hearing a little shouting in the background, but hopefully it will stop soon.
So they're more interested in talking about the problem because they feel like that helps them with the base. As long as there is an issue that they keep complaining about, instead of how do we reform our processes at the border, right? How do we help people who want to come here and seek asylum? They're more interested in talking about the problem and keeping it unsolvable than, solutions.
He did say something which I think is something we all have to think about, that we are now experiencing, this is according to Mayorkas, the greatest displacement of people since World War II in the Western Hemisphere. And when you think about the people that are going to very shortly become climate refugees.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, this is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we don't have an effort to seriously deal with this.
No, and to his point, it is a really good point. We really are seeing an amazing, a really staggering displacement of people. There are people from Haiti, people from Venezuela, people from Nicaragua, but not just that. I mean, look at what's happening with Ukraine, right? Like that obviously had to do with that great displacement of people. But it doesn't have to be war. Like there are conflict-ridden countries in Latin America here that are pushing people away. And so how do we help them instead of talking about how we help them and how we can, who right now the country has a labor shortage issue, right? Even
You wrote about this.
I did write about this.
This is in some ways so ridiculous. Explain what you said.
It was very interesting to me that the chair of the Federal Reserve was talking about immigration. When do you see this? Never. And by the way, he wasn't talking about immigration policy. He wasn't not wading into these controversies. No, he was just saying, because of all the immigration limits that we've had in the past few years and the COVID pandemic, we have seen a huge amount of people leave the workforce. And so he's basically saying the answer is right there. We need more immigrants. There are shortages of everywhere. People are struggling to hire. And I see this repeated in many circles. What is the answer? I mean, even former Mayor Marty Walsh, who is now the Secretary of Labor for President Biden, has said this too. And so at a time, again, when we could use more immigrants, we're making it even harder for them to come here.
Well, the jobs that many people take when they first come to the country because they don't have the education. I mean, you could have been a lawyer in your old country. You're not going to be able to do that when you come here. And a lot of people take jobs that really desperately need filling. I mean, the
service jobs.
And when you think of nursing homes, how many people that when you've gone to visit relatives in nursing home have been from other countries, totally dedicated. But this is a job that a lot of people don't want to do. Right.
And again, at the end of the day, there aren't enough people right now in the workforce, and the solution is immigration. And instead, the Republicans are trying to impeach Mayorkas.
Well, staying on immigration for a moment, we'll quickly ask you. We saw about 5,000 families separated, children removed from their parents during the Trump administration. There was a lot of expectation. There were promises made by the Biden administration that when it came into Washington, it would deal with this problem, it would reunite families, and there would be payments made to these families for what they suffered. Is that happening now?
No, and it's interesting. I struggle with writing about this because, well, the reason why I struggle is because no one's talking about it anymore. And it's like, oh, we totally forgot about family separation. That happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's crazy to think that all this time has happened. But yes, there were more than 5,000 families that were separated at the border through this policy that the Trump administration tried to do. And obviously it was stopped by the courts, et cetera. But during the time it was in effect, more than 5,000 people were separated. Some of them haven't been reunited, even though there is a court order to reunite them, that the government has to make all efforts to reunite them. That's ongoing. But also, there were a lot of lawsuits against the federal government saying, you did harm, what is going to be the remedy? And is there a compensation? And what does the federal government owe to these families, which harmed greatly, in a manner that was so unprecedented, right? That you have to do something. So there were lawsuits. They were still ongoing. When you're right, when President Biden came into office, he said, obviously, we're going to, reverse this and we're going to take care of this. He even said, I think they deserve a cash payment, right? Some form of reparation that shows, hey, we did you a harm. Here's, a way to try to repair it. But then he reversed course because at the end of the day, the Biden administration basically has always calculated that the political fallout, from doing something, in this case, the cash payments, was going to be greater than, basically the backlash from breaking a promise. And that was basically what they did. They reversed course. They were doing negotiation talks over settlements, cash payments. But then it was leaked that some of these families were going to be receiving like up to $500,000 each. And the Republicans and the conservative media went absolutely insane over that. You had, back then the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, saying, how is this possible at a time when Americans are struggling? How are we going to make millionaires of people who came here illegally, blah, blah, blah. And of course, that's not true. These people were coming here to seek asylum, right? And they weren't allowed, and instead they were separated. I mean, imagine a kid separated from her mother. How do you even begin to repair that harm? And so how much money is that worth? Like, ask any person. And so they will tell you that there is no amount. But so instead, they stopped negotiating with, over these lawsuits. And so now the Biden administration is fighting these lawsuits in court, basically saying, no, we don't owe you anything, when in fact, Biden had just said the contrary. So here we are, and that's why I wanted to write again about this, because this is something that's still unresolved. This is something that still is owed to these families. So, hopefully there's still time, right, for the Biden administration to do the right thing.
Hey, Marcela, thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for these great comments. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Marcela Garcia is an associate editor and columnist for the Boston Globe. Coming up, GBH News' Deputy Investigative Editor Jennifer McKim joins us on her latest report on labor trafficking in Massachusetts restaurants. And we'll hear from Amy Farrell from Northeastern School of Criminology. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Trusted, local news.
The State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education swept in last summer, saying if urgent changes weren't made at BPS, the state would take over.
Delving into the stories that matter to you.
We have a new superintendent. She says she's committed, but commitment is shown in action.
There's no way I'm going to come in and be an effective superintendent and not deal with this straight up.
GBH 89.7, online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Brown University pre-college programs, where high school students experience college life, nurture their diverse interests, and make friends and memories that last a lifetime. You can apply online at precollege.brown.edu. And Celebrity Series of Boston. Mandolin virtuoso Chris Thile returns to Celebrity Series with selections from his latest album, Lay Songs, and more. Friday, February 3rd at Sanders Theater. Tickets and more information at celebrityseries.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jared Bowen is in for Jim Browdy. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday, and we are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. So forced labor in Massachusetts restaurant happens much more than you might think, and it is grossly underreported, according to the latest investigative report from the GBH News series Trafficking, Inc. Joining us now for the latest is GBH News Deputy Executive Editor Jennifer McKim, as well as Amy Farrell, Professor at Northeastern University's School of Criminology and Criminal Justice and Co-Director of the Violence and Justice Research Lab. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming in. So let's start, Jennifer, with this very harrowing story you had about a guy that was washing dishes. Tell us.
Well, thanks so much for bringing us here to talk about this important and totally underreported topic. This is part of an ongoing series we're doing on forced labor in Massachusetts, basically showing how troubling it is, how it's very hidden in plain sight. And this third part of our series, we focused on restaurant workers because I was told that data showed that this is one of these areas that we just don't see, and yet it's all around us. And so we tried to ask these questions. I spoke with a man named Billy. He used his nickname. He was an immigrant from El Salvador who told me how he worked up to 85 hours a week, making $6 an hour all day long, from early morning to late at night, no overtime, no breaks, no days off, no sick days. He just, and how hard it was for him to do it, and yet he felt afraid because he was undocumented and he didn't know how to protect himself. He was threatened by his boss about complaining. And this type of story happens over and over again. So we heard this multiple times as we were investigating this report.
So here's some sound from him. Excuse me, Jared. I just want to play some sound from Billy, the restaurant worker profile for the latest Trafficking, Inc. series. He's speaking in Spanish, but you translate, and he's talking about how he feels about his treatment at work.
Entonces uno permanece como escondido.
We remain hidden like prisoners in this country, he says, and I'm tired of being a prisoner.
So if we can back up, because people might hear that, oh, well, this man applied for this job and these are his working conditions. But as you've been reporting, these are people who are deliberately placed into these situations often. So what's the background to how they come to be in these working situations and essentially trafficked labor?
Well, I think, Professor Farrell will probably be able to talk about this a little bit more, but I think there's so many different ways people come into these situations, and he came in on his own volition to the United States to find a job, and then he ended up in a situation that was very troubling and he couldn't get out of. And that's sort of the difference between labor, exploitation, and trafficking, is that situation when it's forced fraud or coercion, and somehow you can't get out of a situation that you're in, even if you started in it as just a bad situation and it gets worse and worse.
Well, Amy Farrell from Northeastern, I read in Jennifer's reporting that these situations are very rarely prosecuted.
Right, exactly. The situation, as Jennifer described, is varied. There are lots of places where people may be vulnerable to labor trafficking and labor exploitation in the workplace. Under federal law, which was passed in 2000, under state law that was passed in 2011, we make provisions for the criminal sort of exploitation of people when you have forced fraud or coercion. But these are very difficult cases to find because people remain under the radar screen. They either don't feel like their victimization is important enough to tell someone about, they've been criminalized before by the justice system, they're worried about their immigration status, they're worried about losing their housing. And as Jennifer noted, the difficulty of these positions is that you can't leave them, right? You owe a debt, your housing is dependent on it, you feel forced or someone has threatened you to leave the position, and so you don't have a lot of incentive to go report it to the police. You've probably been told by the person who's holding you in that position that if you do report it to the police, you will be deported, or you will be arrested, or your family will be harmed. And to be honest, in many of these cases, victims who are the most vulnerable have had histories in systems where that has exactly happened to them. So they continue on, try to look for ways to get out of that position, maybe seek help from somebody who could get them out of the position, but they're very unwilling to go to law enforcement.
Let me ask another way of trying to paint the picture of how people come to find themselves in these situations. Who are the people who are employing them, and why are they employing them in these conditions?
Honestly, we've done a lot of research looking at this all around the country in both adult and child labor trafficking, foreign national, U.S. citizen labor trafficking, and we pretty much find every industry. Anytime you have someone who is an employer that's trying to make more money out of the exploitation of another person and people who are vulnerable. You find that in lower regulated industries, we find this more often. So in places where you might not have people coming in as often to check employment papers or to do regulation or to inspection, but we often find it sometimes even in heavily regulated, restaurants are a fairly heavily regulated industry. And we find over and over again that people in restaurants will say, people came in to do OSHA checks, people came in checks to the machinery, and no one ever asked me what I was doing or if I was okay, right? And so we see that in agriculture, where there's a lot of inspection of machinery, livestock, checking on animals, checking on EPA, but no one's actually asking workers how they are, how they're doing, if they're okay. Are they getting paid? Do they owe a debt? Who's taking their money? Are they having to pay for their housing?
When you say owe a debt, what do you mean by that?
So in cases where an individual comes into the United States, and this is, as you just heard in your last segment, this is a huge issue, right? People are coming to the United States because the conditions that they're facing in other countries are so dire that they need to migrate to the United States. They're getting into the United States. Sometimes they're getting stopped at the border with children. We see this a lot, and then they're placed with sponsors. But their families have had to pay money for them to cross the border. It depends on where they're coming from, but it can be thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. And then once they sort of get to the United States and the people who smuggled them here make contact, they often take contact with people who are going to employ them to pay off that debt. But those employers are paying directly to the smuggler, right? They're not necessarily paying the employee, or the employee has to pay the smuggler back, and their families are threatened back home, their properties are liened back home, their children are threatened, right? And so they're in a situation where they're oftentimes working and can never get out of debt. It's like company store. They owe their housing, they have to pay for their equipment, they might have to pay all these fees to work at a place. And they can't ever get out of debt. Doesn't matter how hard they work. They'll work 80 hours a week, and they're still not making it out of debt.
It's like post-plantation sort of Jim Crow situation.
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering about. I mean, obviously, there was horrific conditions during Jim Crow, and it was a racist thing. Maybe there's a racist thing going on here, too, if there are a lot of people of color. But you do kind of wonder. I mean, you spoke to this guy, Billy. I mean, you have to be a real creep of a restaurateur to be exploiting people in this kind of way. And I'm wondering, you know, you couldn't really do anything about it if you're Billy because of all the situations you just outlined, but other people must see this going on.
Well, I think also if you think about restaurants, I think a lot of restaurant workers, owners work a lot of hours and a lot of days also, and it's sort of, I think it's a system that requires long hours, hard time to take time off. So I think it's a lot of it is a systemic issue that's a problem. I wanted to mention also about the lack of prosecutions. We found in our investigation that since 2011, when the state passed its human trafficking law, there's not yet been one conviction of forced labor in the state. And it's something that the U.S. Attorney's Office knows about it, is concerned about, and the Attorney General's Office both are. Also at the federal level, there's only been one conviction, as she said, since the law was passed in 2000. So it's so hidden, which is the amazing thing. You talked to Rachel Rollins, the new U.S. Attorney, who is quite out of the box in terms of a lot of her prosecutions back here as a Suffolk County DA. So what'd she say about this? It's human trafficking is something that is very much on her radar. When she started last year, she created a human trafficking office, and they're looking at things. But so far, yet they still haven't either filed a forced labor case. She has said that it's something that is likely we will see in the future. Oh, go ahead, Jared.
Well, it makes me wonder then, so if we know this is happening, yet these cases haven't been prosecuted, do we have any idea how prevalent this is? How many restaurants we're driving by, or homes where people are the caretakers in a home where this is happening?
We don't. I mean, this is at the end of the day, we don't. This is very, very hidden, right? So we do have some information. So as Jennifer said, there have been very few prosecutions in Massachusetts. There have been more prosecutions in other states. So we have hundreds of federal prosecutions of labor trafficking, and in some states, there's a lot more capacity to identify victims. Some of that is about the ability to identify through different channels, like through advocacy organizations. But you know, if we think about how many violations of wage and hour, or even H-2A or H-2B violations, which are the non-immigrant visas that bring hundreds of thousands of people into the United States to work as non-immigrant workers. We have thousands of violations of those visas every year where people violate the conditions that they promise to their employees. right? So if we have those large numbers, as Jennifer talked about in the piece, of violations, behind them is likely labor trafficking. And we're not doing a good job proactively thinking about when we have wage and hour violations or if H-2A or H-2B violations, that behind those could sit exploited labor.
Well, we have a sound, I'm going to play it in a second, from an immigration attorney in Boston, Talia Bareilles, that you spoke with. And she thinks, and I guess we all should be thinking now, about the treatment of immigrant workers in restaurants. She believes is so bad, she's on high alert every time she goes to a restaurant. Here she is.
Because I feel like everywhere I go, I'm very vigilant of what kind of situation there is because it's so prevalent. It's just almost everywhere you go.
Okay, now something else to feel terrible about. What's going on?
I was out last Saturday night looking at these restaurants and thinking, who is preparing my food and washing the dishes at this restaurant I'm at?
Well, but this, of course, is not just in the restaurant business. We talked to you last fall, Jennifer McKim, about this woman who was employed as a nanny by a family from the United Arab Emirates, I think, and they were in Brookline.
Yes.
And it was the same sort of horror show for her. Remind us again what that was all about.
That's what this story has been, kind of looking at all the different industries and how different people come in. So we spoke to domestic workers who are actually living in Brookline, who had come here with their employers from the UAE to dealing with hospital issues, so coming to the fantastic hospitals that we have in Massachusetts, and then basically being hidden in their house, working all day long from morning to night, not being allowed out without their employers, not being paid very little or nothing at all, and terrified to tell anyone, terrified even when they go to the hospital. So there are now people who are trying to help people see this stuff. There's actually efforts to get people who are able to be with people who might be at risk to ask them those questions that Amy talked about, which is, are you at risk? Are you afraid? Are you getting paid? Are you allowed out? All those kind of things. So the domestic workers were very surprising and compelling as a reporter to talk to these folks.
And we just heard from Amy all the reasons that people don't want to leave their situations, fear, the debt, etc. What made her leave in that situation?
I think that she started to talk to someone who saw her so afraid outside every morning when she was dropping the kids off at the bus, and the person started to ask her those very questions. Are you allowed out? Are you afraid? And she'd kind of sneak these questions to her. And finally, she set her up with someone who was an advocate, and she ran out the back steps, ran into a car, and escaped to a safe home where she got out. And then basically her employers escaped. They left the country before they could be charged. And so there is still no sort of legal punishment for what happened to her. And that happens often in so many cases. And they also often confuse it as a wage and hour dispute rather than trafficking. So that's another reason we're not seeing it in the criminal courts.
We're talking to Jennifer McKim. She's GBH News Deputy Executive Editor, and Amy Farrell, Professor at Northeastern University School of Criminology and Criminal Justice and Co-Director of the Violence and Justice Research Lab. We talked to you before, Jennifer, about these T visas that could be something. They're not perfect, but they're something.
Right. So there is a federal effort to help people who can prove to the federal government that they have suffered a severe form of trafficking. And we found that it's great when people get it, but the problem is that often it takes so long. Someone like that domestic worker who escapes with literally the shirt on her back and nothing else, and she can't get work authorization. It can take years, and so she's dependent on the help of others. And so that's a problem. It's a great system in that it can help people, but it takes way too long. So many people like Billy don't even know that they're a trafficking victim. He has just realized that he can use that language, and he's now applying for one of these visas himself or seeking advice on that. So that's an issue that there has been a lot of discussion about.
And I would just say that only is going to help foreign national victims who don't have status. There are plenty of foreign national victims that are in this situation that have status and need other things. They need to get out of an exploitation situation. And there's U.S. citizens that are being exploited, right? So that particularly we see with children and with people that are vulnerable, like people that are U.S. citizens that have intellectual disabilities, people that have served time in prison, people that have housing insecurity. These are some of the groups that are the most vulnerable to exploitation and trafficking. And one of the things we're starting to look at a lot more is this idea of forced criminalization. This idea that in some situations, kids that may be sometimes in a sex trafficking situation and a labor trafficking situation where they're forced to shoplift, panhandle, sell drugs, distribute drugs, manufacture drugs, Panhandling can oftentimes be something where people are actually working for someone else. They're basically giving all the money they get to somebody who provides them a really cheap hotel room or a place to stay or meal, and they're not controlling their own labor, even though that labor is illegal.
So, Amy, sorry.
I was just going to say, and like the way 20 years ago, we used to criminalize young girls largely for child prostitution, which they used to call it, and now they call it sex trafficking and say any minor who is being forced to sell their body for gain is actually a trafficking victim. I think there is now new language and understanding, and Amy is at the forefront of this, that young people, young kids might be being trafficked in gangs and criminalized for things they have no control over.
So, Amy, I was going to ask, given that this is so hidden systemically, what needs to change to change this? I mean, we can't keep relying on empathetic people in Brookline who might recognize a situation that is out of the norm, because that's not going to happen by and large.
Right. I mean, so there's pieces that can change in terms of increasing identification, right? There's a lot of law enforcement training that has to happen. There's training of people in things like DCF, schools, in all types of service provisions, in housing, like homeless shelters, to do screening, as Jennifer was talking about, the ability to actually give people the language to say, are these things that have happened to you? You may not define yourself this way, but how can we get you assistance? I think more importantly, though, this is about some major issues we're having around the quality of work in the United States, the idea of being able to treat people with respect and dignity in work, the idea of having regulation and accountability in labor. And for many of these victims, this is about the fact that there's groups of individuals in the United States that are seen as less than human who this can happen to. This is why this happens. It happens because someone doesn't think they're valuable enough to actually treat them like a human being and pay them a living wage and not exploit them, right? And so it's about discrimination, it is about inequity, and is about a labor system that has historically depended on our ability for us to have cheap labor so that we can have cheap things. And at some point in time, we do have to take a hard look at how much we're willing to pay as consumers, how much accountability we want to have in businesses, and ways to keep people safe in all of their work, which is a fundamental part of the human condition. I would say talking to trafficking victims, all they want to do is work. They have come here to work. They are trying to work. They're trying to be a human being who makes a living, who does things to provide for themselves and their family. And, they have such earnesty about that. The fact that we can't recognize and treat them with dignity and respect, I think, is a really sad state.
So you mentioned, Jennifer McKim, the T visa is not perfect, and that's because it takes so long to get, or
Well,
what?
there's a lot of systems. It takes long to get. It's hard. There's a lot, especially under the Trump administration, it was really hard to persuade immigration officials to approve them. And then there's this issue of some people don't even know how to get to it. Most people who work, like Talia Barales, who work with immigrants who come in, they come in with some wage complaint. And it's only after they talk for a while they realize that they can call that they were victims of trafficking. So it's a lot of this fact. I think it's really interesting because I've covered sex trafficking for 20 years, that back in the day, we were so surprised that happened in the United States of America, that local people were being trafficked. And I think this is just a new conversation about forced labor and labor trafficking that we're also beginning to realize that it's happening here.
Well, that's a big online thing, right? Where you'd be talking to someone online and suddenly that person, you think that person is a boyfriend or something like that. Isn't that how a lot of recruiting goes on?
You're talking about now with sex trafficking
Yes.
kind of thing? Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways that people get drawn into being trafficked by vulnerable girls and young men. We did a whole project on young men recently. But yeah, there's lots of ways people get sort of drawn into something that becomes very vicious in the end.
Before you go, Amy, I was just wondering, from the criminal justice perspective, you touched on some of the things that we're kind of changing the way we look at things. But is this a big priority, this kind of labor trafficking and criminal justice now?
I mean, it has become increasingly a priority, and I think to Jennifer's point, within law enforcement across the country 20 years ago, we had, there weren't even conversations happening about sex trafficking. You'd be hard-pressed to find a law enforcement agency today that didn't have probably a protocol on sex trafficking, that isn't thinking about how to respond better. There's a lot still to do in the response on sex trafficking. We're not perfect in any way, but there's a lot more knowledge about it. And in some ways that makes sense because the idea of commercial sex or vice was something that law enforcement always had authority over. Trafficking of labor is a lot harder because that's not something the police, your local police from the Boston Police Department, are normally doing. right? So they have a lot of learning to do. They need to partner with those agencies that have long histories of working in different kinds of workforces, where they can go in and do inspections, where they can learn how to build cases, and where they can work proactively. Because if we just wait for victims to pick up the phone and call, we are never going to get any further than we are today, right? This is about proactive investigations that are going to make people safe at their workplace.
What's Billy's situation now?
So he's been working in restaurants for 15 years. He's worked at 8 different restaurants. He said like half of them were terrible, and now he's very grateful because he's only working 45 hours a week and he's making $21 an hour. So he's feeling like this is a good situation compared to his other ones. He's still living in a rented room, trying to make ends meet, and trying now to make some money so that he can apply for this T visa and be legally here.
Boy, thank you very much for doing this work, and thank you both very much for coming in. This was really eye-opening. I hate to use such a cliche, but it is eye-opening. I think many of us don't realize any of this is going on.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have been speaking with GBH News' Deputy Investigative Editor, Jennifer McKim, and Amy Farrell, Professor at Northeastern University's School of Criminology and Criminal Justice and Co-Director of the Violence and Justice Research Lab. You can find all of their reporting on Trafficking, Inc. That series is at gbhnews.org. Well, coming up, hopefully you spend your mornings listening to Paris and Jeremy on GBH 89.7. But if you wander up the dial, then you'll know our next guest, Billy Costa, is here from KISS 108 and GBH's High School Quiz Show. Season 14 of Quiz Show premieres next week, and Billy's here, this is very unfortunate, to quiz us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
When 90s TV star and sex symbol Pamela Anderson decided to tell her story, she wanted full control.
I don't want a ghostwriter. I don't want a collaborator. I just need a great editor.
And that's exactly what happened.
I wrote every word.
I'm Ari Shapiro, Pamela Anderson in her own words on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, where MBA and master's degree students can build vital business skills through experience. northeastern.edu/business.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are live from the Boston Public Library. Jim Browdy is out and Jared Bowen is in. We are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Coming up, a little trepidation here.
Yeah, can Jim come back? I don't want to be here right now.
Yeah, we don't like quizzes because we always lose. But anyway, we are about to talk to Billy Costa from GBH's High School Quiz Show, returning for its 14th season, one of the most fun shows on GBH. Here's some sound from the finale of last season's High School Quiz Show, which saw North Quincy defeat Andover. And here's Billy Costa asking some Massachusetts-based questions.
What crime writer is the author of Gone Baby Gone and Mystic River, both set in Boston? Is it Robert Parker, Elmore Leonard, or Dennis Lehane? Dennis Lehane. What Massachusetts native and Oscar-winning actress known for Moonstruck and Steel Magnolias passed away in 2021 at the age of 89? Shirley MacLaine, Olympia Dukakis, or Sally Field? Olympia Dukakis.
Okay, we're going to get multiple choice.
Would you have known either of those?
I was just thinking,
Dennis
why couldn't I have
Lehane.
that quiz?
I would have known Dennis Lehane. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Dennis Lehane, Olympia Dukakis, but I need multiple choice. Can I get multiple choice, do you think, when we do the quiz?
I may have a couple of multiple choice.
Okay.
Before we get going, I know Jim is not here.
He's not here.
I
You know
you've
why?
Always...
He was afraid to come in today.
that is. Yeah, he
why.
really has nothing going on. He
Nothing
just didn't want to
going
have the quiz show. There you go. One for because,
oh my God! Look at you.
Because we're kicking off season 14.
That's right.
14 seasons of high school
14
quiz.
seasons.
It's okay. You can make some noise. 14 seasons.
14 seasons.
It's okay.
Well, you're going to tell us. You're going to tell us. I should also say,
But
I
we
had to
should
get the
just say you just
introduction.
handed us your headshot. You didn't
Yeah.
even sign it, though.
Oh,
no Billy Costa autograph here.
I didn't want to assume that you folks would want an autograph, but that's from the first season.
Okay,
My
now we
first
have to
season.
give you the proper introduction here. You not only run that high school quiz show back for its 14th season, but you're also the co-host of KISS 108, Billy and Lisa in the Morning, host of the KISS Top 30 Countdown, and co-host of Dining Playbook on Nessun. That's how you say it, right? You are a very busy man, Billy Costa. But welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're very glad you're here, even though we don't like this quiz one little bit. And that's
Are you
the
trying to
reason
kill
Jim
time
took
before
day.
the quiz?
Well, before we get to the quiz, tell people who haven't seen it, and it is a great show, and these kids are so smart. Tell us about what happens on Quiz Show.
Like I said, this is my 13th season on High School Quiz Show, and I'm still fascinated with the kids and the teams that come in every year. Understand, it starts every year with what we call Super Sunday. And now I have a picture of
There's
Jim
a
and
picture
Marjorie.
of me
Thank
and Jim.
you.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
yours is
Here's
already...
one for me, and I drew myself onto it.
Anyway, it starts with Super Sunday. We're talking over 100 schools come in every year and compete just for the right to make it to the tournament bracket. We're currently taping the new season, which will kick off Saturday night, February 4th, 6 o'clock on WGBH2. You can also get High School Quiz Show on a YouTube channel. It's just a fabulous time. These kids are amazing, and we do have a lot of teams that have won before who are back, like Acton Boxborough Regional High School, Lexington High, Boston Latin is back this year. They've won at least one, I think 2 seasons. Andover High School is also back. And we have a lot of new schools this year, like Phillips Academy out of Andover and the Commonwealth School, St. Joseph Prep. So
wow,
schools are always trying to get in. That doesn't mean these new schools haven't tried at Super Sunday in the past and just not made it, but it's going to be another exciting season.
Well, can I ask you, I've been at GBH for a long time, and I used to work with Hillary Wells, your producer over here.
Yeah.
I remember when she got High School Quiz Show off the ground, so I'm wondering what you've seen happen, what the place of Quiz Show has become among the Massachusetts school district.
It's the seriousness with which these teams take it. I mean, they practice, they rehearse, they come in with their game faces on. They work so hard. It means so much to them to win. And you feel that throughout the season. The audiences get very involved. We see team mascots come in. We see parents, we see families, we see grandparents, we see children, younger siblings. And the live auction, the live audience is open to anyone who wants to be in the audience. It so happens this season, a lot of the audiences have sold out. But I know at least one day this weekend, we still have some availability in the audience.
How do you get the tickets?
Thank you. Very good question, Marjorie. You're right on top of it.
I am on top of it.
You go to highschoolquizshow.org.
Oh, that's easy to remember.
Yeah.
Highschoolquizshow.org.
Hillary, you impressed? I've got all this just banging it right out.
So Billy Costa, in the 14 years, any big high moments and any big disaster moments, maybe without names being used, you could tell us about? Are there any, some people must get up there and just freeze, but they have 4 of them, right?
Yeah, well,
so they can help each other out a little bit?
Yes, and I will say this, and I have to give credit to the teams and to the students again, because for a couple of years we were remote. Like this year, we're back with a live audience for the first time in at least 2 seasons. And for a couple of seasons, if you can imagine, the contestants were at home,
Yes.
and I had them on screens,
Zoom.
and one of them would be in an attic room somewhere upstairs, another would be in their dining room, somebody else in the kitchen, people walking by as they're answering questions, and
Dogs and cats.
And the audience as well was virtual for a couple of years. So that's one of the most exciting things about this current season is we do have a live audience back in the studio, and all of the contestants are back in the studio, and the mascots and everything else. So it's exciting, and it's a lot of fun.
And when you mentioned before that more than 100 schools compete, so how many schools actually get to be on TV?
Very good question. Hillary, is it 17? Yes, 17, because we do have a wild card round to kick off the entire season. 2 teams fight for a chance to get in the bracket, so to speak. So, 17 teams make it.
And in 14 years, is there a Super Bowl Patriots kind of running streak that any high school has exhibited, or has it been all over the place?
Kind of all over the place, because when I look at my notes right here, it's like, for instance, Lexington High School won 2 years. Seasons 7 and 8, Boston Latin School won seasons 10 and 11, Andover won season 9. I remember Advanced Math Academy competed several times, and they've won a couple of times, I think. So it's pretty exciting.
And when you're not doing that, you're appearing in the pages of Us Weekly.
Okay,
yes.
Are we going there?
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, my God.
We are.
Anything we can do to stall our own quiz, we'll do.
I don't know. There was Us Weekly. There was the Daily Mail. There was, it went on. And are you talking about the Teresa Giudice thing?
We have some
from Real
sound.
Housewives,
We have some sound. You interviewed Teresa Giudice of, how do you say it?
Judice or Giudice, whatever.
Giudice of Real Housewives of New Jersey. You guys have probably seen her on TV, but it turned very tense after you mentioned her time in prison. Here's some sound of how you and your team reacted to that.
Negative housewife got me all screwed up.
I'm sorry.
It's not the Real Housewives, it's the hellish housewives. What a monster.
Okay.
Is that coming up?
Wait a minute.
Oh, yeah. More with Teresa Giudice coming up.
Okay. In my defense.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay. First of all, for some reason, I had a rule of my own ever since the Housewives franchises ever came about. I said, I never want to have anybody from the Housewives. To me, it's like, it's not our thing. It's just not real to me. So my executive producer, Justin, walks in one morning, and he says, Billy, I booked Teresa Giudice. I said, from the Real Housewives? And he said, yeah. I said, but I thought we had a standing rule. I don't have them on the show. And he said, yeah, but we're doing it as a favor for Lynn Auditorium, because the Lynn Auditorium, we do a lot with them, and they reached out to us because, as it happens, the Housewives event wasn't really selling. So
no.
We were doing them a favor, and then Teresa comes on the show, and here's the deal. I was handed a press release, right? And again, they were asking us for a favor. Now, 90% of the press release was about her time in prison. Because she's out with a best-selling book all about her time in prison. So in a positive way, I tried to stay away from the prison, but I said, I have to give you credit. You turned the whole prison thing around, and now you're sitting on a bestseller. That's unbelievable. And she instantly, I don't want to talk about that. And I'm like, no, but it's all over your, that's why you're on. You're doing a book tour about your bestseller and your time in prison. And she kept coming back at me she kept telling me I'm not namaste enough. And I'm like, I'm asking a question that's in your press release. And then, wouldn't you know, a week or two later, she was on with Andy Cohen, and the entire hour was about her time in prison.
Why was she in prison?
She and her husband both went. Remember, it was a big story. They let them go separately so one of them could be with the children. It was mostly, I think, about taxes.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Who are we to say?
Okay. Well, I have to say the dreaded moment may have arrived here.
Here we go.
Now, we have some questions for you.
Oh.
Yes, we do.
See, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. This is how you get back at me?
Well, we're just going to do a couple. We've got multiple choice, okay? A couple.
But it's a learning show. This is NPR.
It's a learning show.
Exactly.
So we could ask them. We could ask your questions. We'll ask one. Adrian ask one, and then you can do ours.
Can I phone a friend?
Yeah, that's right.
Audience?
We can have people out in the audience. The lifeline. The lifeline.
Yes.
People in the audience. Okay. You ready for this one?
Okay.
Okay. You've heard of Representative George Santos, the congressman who's had a few problems with the truth.
Yes.
So which of the latest absurd revelation about George Santos is not true? A, his time as a drag queen in Brazil under the name Guitarra Rivas. B, his mother died twice, once on 9/11. C, his one-time roommate in an interview on Boston Public Radio said he repeatedly ate peanut butter straight from the jar with a spoon and would leave the peanut buttery spoon unwashed in the sink for days.
I'm going to go with A.
No.
I was wrong?
He was a drag queen in Brazil, but he stood us up. He was supposed to be here yesterday morning. We read all about him. We read all about George Santos and the lies and the rumors, and the guy stiffed us.
Santos was coming in?
The roommate of George Santos.
Who knows
No,
all
I
the
wish we
stories.
could. I wish the George Santos, but the roommate.
He no-showed you, the roommate?
He no-showed us. We were devastated. Let me
I
tell
think
you,
he had
Billy
a talk.
Costa.
He
We
had
were
a talking too.
Absolutely.
Where was the audience? I thought I was getting help on that one.
Okay, that's right. Maybe we could have a show of hands to help us along.
Yes.
When Jared and I do it, we want a show
That's
of
right.
hands so you can tell us
That's
what the
right.
right answer is.
Okay.
Okay, Jared, you go ahead now.
We're asking questions still?
Yes, one more.
Okay. Which of the following is not a false claim made by George Santos?
Oh, God, George Santos.
Wait a minute. Okay, he's back again.
Am I allowed?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you had the wrong one, but you're right. I'm wrong.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. A, he attended Horace Mann and Brooke College. B, he had roles on Disney Channel shows such as Hannah Montana and The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. C, he worked at Moderna to develop the COVID-19 vaccine. Or D, he worked at Goldman Sachs and Citigroup.
Okay, I know.
This is a hard one.
I know the college is true.
College is true.
Yes, that's
You're
true.
right. We got any help from the audience? Anybody want to shout out the answer?
Show of hands if anybody knows. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. He never worked at Moderna, did he?
Wow. You got it?
Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
Very good. Very
you,
good.
You doubt me. You know what? Doubt me. I'm just full of information.
Okay. Do you want to get this over with, Jared?
Fine.
Okay, let's do it.
Because I'm a little nervous about this.
Now, one of
Are
you
we
has
going to get
to...
multiple choice?
Some of them might be. I don't know. This is the
I need
first I'm
multiple
seeing
choice
of them.
because I can't pull this out of thin air. I need multiple
Okay,
choice.
okay.
It's like the college boys. Didn't you get multiple choice in the college boards? I think you did, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Well, if
Thank
neither
God.
of you
She's
gets
filibustering.
I am.
If neither of you gets it, we'll let the audience raise their hand
Okay.
for bonus points.
Okay.
Okay? So here we go. While taking a quick break from filming 2016's Doctor Strange, one actor in the title role walked into a comic book store in full costume and bought an actual Doctor Strange comic.
I have no idea.
You have to buzz
at
in.
all.
You have to
Benedict
buzz in.
Cumberbatch.
Yes.
Very
yes.
good.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
I
All
never
right.
heard of Doctor
Boy,
Strange.
look at the rookie. There's
Dr.
the rookie
Strange
right there.
Love.
Yeah.
I guess I'm dating myself there.
Marjorie, you really don't know anything, do you?
I
No, I'm
don't.
kidding.
I don't. It's all a ruse.
Okay, ready? According to folklore, you will have bad luck if you say the title of what Shakespeare play while inside a theater.
I know this.
Could it be Macbeth?
It is Macbeth.
Is it Macbeth?
Yes, it is Macbeth. Why are you so excited? No, you didn't know. It was.
Didn't I say it first?
He
I
was
think
in
I said,
first.
I said I think I know it.
Yeah.
And then I said Macbeth.
Okay.
Okay, why is that?
They say the Scottish play.
Oh, because
So nothing
all the
happens.
murders in there? Is that why?
I don't know.
Double, toil
Yeah.
and trouble, whatever it was that the witches were
Now
stirring
she's
the
showing
blood.
it. You can't
I'm
get
showing
bonus
it off. That's
points
right.
yet for that.
That's right. I remember that one. I saw it at the Repertory Theater down in Providence.
Filibustering.
She's filibustering again.
Okay.
Hey, little fun fact. I'll help you out with some more
Okay.
filibustering. So the Academy Award nominations came out this morning. The Razzie nominations came out yesterday. How about this? So Tom Hanks got 2 Razzie nominations for the
Otto?
Elvis movie, right? And yet Austin Butler will probably, or very could likely, win the Academy Award for Best Actor in the movie Elvis.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's like embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, it's not. I just happened to watch that on a plane this weekend.
I actually
and-
like Tom Hanks in
Oh,
the
you did?
Elvis movie
I
as Colonel
didn't.
Parker. Yes.
Yeah.
God, he was that bad? He was in this other one about the old crabby guy next door. Is that
Yeah,
Otto?
A Man Called Otto.
Yeah.
Yeah,
called
Man
Otto.
Called Otto.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know something? Sometimes the critics don't know anything.
Yeah.
I went to a movie that was supposed to be horrible, and I went anyway, and it wasn't that bad.
Anyway, speaking
What's your
of the,
favorite Tom Hanks movie, Marjorie?
Okay,
Filibustering.
now you're both filibustering. Okay,
Of
so
course,
let's go.
Forrest Gump, right? Isn't it?
Or Splash.
Oh,
Splash.
oh.
What?
That's a hard one, right?
Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh, he was great in Saving
was.
Private
Yeah.
Ryan. Yeah.
Okay, ready? The 3 Grammy Awards that Elvis earned during his lifetime were all for which category? Country, gospel, or rock? There's your multiple choice.
I'd say gospel.
Me too.
Bing, 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 you're both right. Gospel. Yeah.
Woo! 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3.
Okay.
You've gotten all 3. You've gotten every one. Jared, you're not supposed to get every one. I am
I don't
actually the
think-
host. You're only here filling in for Jim.
He's
The
showing
host is
off.
supposed to win. You know what I mean?
He's showing
He's
off.
showing off.
Yeah.
He's showing off. That's right.
It's like the equivalent of
Okay,
showboating
hold
in the
on.
end zone.
Now, I think it's time for you to answer another
No,
question
because
here.
I've got some really good ones
you do?
here.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
In 2022, Queen Elizabeth II became the first British monarch to celebrate a platinum jubilee, marking how many years in the throne?
75.
Marjorie.
Wrong. I'm supposed to get multiple choice?
Wait.
No, I said occasionally there might be a multiple choice. Jared? Oh, come
Was
on.
it 70
Jared.
years?
70 years
70
is
years.
correct.
Very good. Jesus, you're
I
killing
only,
me
I only
here.
get that by default.
God, are
You're
you
killing me
you
here.
have a goose egg right now? You
I
zero?
do. No, I'm not 0.
Okay.
I'm 2. It's 4-2.
All
Jared
right.
is, alas, ahead.
Here we go. In the 1939 movie The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's magic slippers were changed to ruby red to show more vividly against the yellow brick road. What color are they in the original book?
Okay, we're not supposed to. We know this one already. Someone leaked us this question.
Who leaked? We have a leaker? There's a leaker?
We held our producer Jamie down this morning and said, you got to help us. We can't lose them all.
Yeah. So we can say this together. Jared, 3, 2, 1, silver.
Yes, bing, bing, bing. This is an easy one.
Okay.
All
Don't
right.
say that, because then if you get it bad, you feel, you feel
Nikita
terrible.
Khrushchev in 1940.
I took all those out.
Okay.
Former Massachusetts State Senator Eric Lesser once worked as a consultant on what HBO political satire starring Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
Oh, Veep.
Okay, bing, 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 you both got it.
That's a good one.
Okay.
All right, one more. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
We have to quit while we're ahead here.
This might be a little tougher. I can't be sure.
Okay.
Widely praised for her handling of the coronavirus pandemic in January 2023, what Prime Minister of New Zealand made the surprise announcement that she was resigning from office?
Jacinda, whatever it is.
Jacinda
Ardern.
Whatever her name is? She was the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Jacinda Ardern.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
All right, bing, bing, bing.
She said she wanted to get married, and she didn't have time to plan her wedding while she was the Prime Minister. Okay, do you want to do one more for us?
Okay.
Okay, take one more. Okay.
Is this Sonos again, or it's Soros again?
No, it's not Soros.
Okay.
Santos.
It was never Sonos.
Santos, George Santos. Although, he might be one of the multiple choice answers.
Okay.
You have to guess who said it. Pelosi's gazpacho police are spying on members of Congress, spying on the legislative work that we do, spying on our staff, and spying on American citizens who want to come talk to their representatives. Okay, who said it? A, Marjorie Taylor Greene. B, Lauren Boebert. C, the ever-present George Santos. Or D, Matt Gaetz.
Ooh.
Pelosi's gazpacho police.
I
think I just heard it from the audience.
I'm going to go with Matt Gaetz.
That was a very good guess.
No.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're both in the same
She
boat.
was
if you
going to be
ask
my
me.
first guess.
Yeah, well, she's a good guess. She's now very chummy with Kevin McCarthy. They seem to be gazing in each other's eyes all the time.
Yeah.
So tell us now.
Final question.
What?
Right, very quickly. There's a major pop star involved in a hearing in Washington today. Who is it?
Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Very good.
Come on.
The whole
We're
ticket-
throwing
the whole
these out.
ticket
Let's
master.
go.
I must admit.
Come on.
Jared is the winner here. Jared, what is it, like 7-3 or something like that? But anyway.
I'm all about evening you right now.
Okay, at least I get a few of them. So
Jim
get back.
Browdy should skip again next year.
He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to have any part of this. He's too nervous because I think I beat him 6-0 last year, and he was very upset about it. Or maybe it was actually 6-3 or something like that. But anyway, so tell us. So when is the high school quiz show going to be on, and when can people watch it, and all that kind of stuff? Give us the full details.
It will start. The season premiere will be Saturday, February 4th at 6 p.m. on WGBH2 or the YouTube channel. You can get us. And anything you ever need about Quiz Show, you can go to highschoolquizshow.org. There's that.
Now, do you tape these in advance?
Let me ask. Do I tape these in advance, Hillary? Yes, I do.
So everybody has to keep the secret, like on Jeopardy? You know,
oh, yes.
Is it kind of one of those
You
deals?
notice I didn't give you any results from any of the rounds we've already taken.
Yeah, so how do you do that? Because I've often wondered, if you went on Jeopardy and you won, how could you keep that a secret, like
Right.
for even a day, never mind a few
Well,
weeks?
look at all the people on like The Bachelor and Survivor and
That's
all those
right.
reality shows.
That's right.
So we really actually count on our live audiences, and I tell them in advance of the show every week, just make sure you keep the results of the show to yourself.
For how
Now,
long? For how long?
Who knows if they really are?
How long?
Until the show airs, until the episode airs.
So that's pretty difficult, isn't it?
It would be for me.
Yeah.
I've already told everybody I know. No, I didn't. I'm just kidding, Hillary.
So, Billy Costa, that wasn't too humiliating, was it? You were really good, Jared.
It was purely by accident.
Jared, you should go on Jeopardy.
Yeah, no, I should not. That would be, yeah, I see what you're doing, and I'll follow my face in front of.
Well, he almost shut you out. And don't forget, there is still some space in the live audience.
That's
if
right.
you want to go to highschoolquizshow.org. We tape on the weekends. We'll be taping this weekend all day Saturday and all day Sunday.
Well, you know something, in seriousness, it is a great, fun show. I watched it with my kids a million times, and it's great. And, you know, none of us know any of the answers, but that's okay.
Oh, no, never. I don't know any of them.
Thank you very much for coming in, Billy
Thank you
Costa.
guys for
Great
having
to see
me.
you. Great
Really,
to see
thank
you.
Thanks, everybody.
It is great to see you. Billy Costa is co-host of Kiss 108's Billy and Lisa in the Morning and hosts GBH's High School Quiz Show. Season 14 of Quiz Show will premiere next week, February 4th at 6 o'clock on GBH2 and the High School Quiz Show YouTube channel. New episodes air every Saturday through May 20th. Thank you again. Coming up, CNN's John King. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public
Being a GBH member has many benefits, including access to thousands of hours of PBS programs through GBH Passport. From Masterpiece to Nova, American Experience to Antiques Roadshow, popular newer shows like All Creatures Great and Small, even older favorites like The French Chef. And it's all included in your GBH membership. So if you're already a member, just register online today. Or become a member and start streaming your favorite PBS shows at gbh.org/passport.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Newbury Court, a full-service residential community in Concord, Massachusetts for persons 62 or over, committed to creating an active, independent lifestyle. More at newburycourt.org or 978-369-5155. And Celebrity Series, presenting Broadway's Jessica Vosk in My Golden Age, a performance that pays homage to artists who inspire her, from Sondheim and Judy Garland to Elton John and Taylor Swift, February 5th at Symphony Hall. CelebritySeries.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim has the day off. He'll be back tomorrow. Filling in is GBH Executive Editor Jared Bowen. Okay, we got some breaking news, and we're so excited to be able to talk about it with CNN's John King, Chief National Correspondent, host of Inside Politics, weekdays at noon. We saw this breaking news on your show, John King. So do tell us about the document situation, what seems to be like an epidemic.
It does. Example number 3, exhibit number 3, I guess, is the former Vice President, Mike Pence, who has repeatedly said, I was extra cautious about these things. I certainly did not take any with me. But after the Biden disclosures, asked one of his attorneys with security clearances to go search some records at his home in Indiana, and they found a number of documents. And they alerted the archives, and they alerted the FBI, and they've turned the documents over. And so now you have the Justice Department has to make yet another decision, right? And again, these documents are in a place they do not belong. Just like the Biden documents are in a place they do not belong. The question for the Justice Department is there any nefarious intent? Were they deliberately taken? And we're still piecing this together. Or my great colleague Jamie Gangel broke this story earlier in the noon hour. Every indication here is that, Pence thought, I don't have any, but let's just be extra careful. And they did the right thing. But we've learned in these past investigations, you can be surprised sometimes. So now, the Justice Department has to look at it. They did not do a search. The FBI did not search Mike Pence's house. They turned over the documents that a lawyer with security clearances found. So the question for the Justice Department now is, in the case of the Biden residence, Justice Department decided they needed to send their own people in and do a search. Does that happen in the Pence investigation, or do they just take their word for it? We're going to have to wait on that one. But you have a Trump special counsel, you have a Biden special counsel, and now the Attorney General has to look at this one and say, can I treat this differently, or do I have to have a third special counsel?
And what's the timing on this one in terms of when the documents were turned over, discovered, blah, blah, blah? Essentially, we still wouldn't know were it not for your colleague.
But just last week, the documents were turned over, Jared. It's a great question. And look, I assume that members of the United States Senate and House who are on sensitive committees, I assume that, maybe Al Gore, maybe Barack Obama, maybe Dick Cheney, maybe everybody who's served in government in the last 20 years who had access to these documents is thinking, okay, should I double check or triple check? Right? I hate to say it that way, because I do think, and look, a political beneficiary of this is Donald Trump. You might argue that Joe Biden is potentially a political beneficiary of Mike Pence also being in the pot. It gets hard sometimes. You guys do this better than most because you take the time and you walk through things. The facts actually matter. And when you look at the Trump case in Mar-a-Lago, way more documents, much more evidence of intent to take the documents. Documented evidence of Trump attorneys signing papers attesting to the fact that all documents had been returned, and then we find out, no, that's not true, and the FBI happened to execute a search warrant. In the Biden case, a voluntary search of the president's home. They said, yes, please, come look in the home. In the Trump case, the FBI had to go serve a search warrant. We'll see where the Pence thing gets us. But the documents were just turned over last week. And so now, again, the archives has to go chronicle them. We don't know the subject matter, so we don't know. Obviously, they're sensitive. They're classified. They belong in a secure government vault and files, not in somebody's private home. But we don't know the exact subject matters. We don't know how sensitive they are on the scale of sensitivity. So guess what? Just like in the Trump case and in the Biden case, I suspect over the next week, 10 days, we're going to get new details. Things will trickle out. And then again, the Justice Department is going to have to make a decision. The next decision, I believe, is do we have to send in our own people to verify we have everything, or do we take them at their word?
You mentioned other people searching: Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, senators, anybody else. Al Gore was in the White House. I'm sure they are very concerned at this point about things that they may have gotten. But it does seem, as you say, for people that were hoping the documents issue was going to be the issue that would have caused some criminal or at least some big time was going to catch Donald Trump, it looks like that's done. I just don't see how, despite the differences, you could go ahead and prosecute him without people saying, well, wait a minute, even though there are these big differences.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, and obviously there's so much we don't know about the Trump investigation. But I do think it's T-ball politically for Donald Trump. And again, he doesn't care about the facts. He doesn't do nuance. But he's good at it. I don't say that happily or proudly, but he's good at being cynical and twisting things and taking a nugget and turning it into a big conspiracy. And unfortunately, a lot of his voters tend to support him or agree with him when he does that. So I think it complicates whether it's a special counsel or the Attorney General in the end deciding to accept the recommendation of a special counsel. It certainly complicates things. Again, the facts as we know them are very, very different about intent, about the volume, about the scope, about the length of time. In the case of, I'm not defending either President Biden or Vice President Pence, in the sense that, they're supposed to know better. They both served Mike Pence in the House and as Indiana governor before he was vice president. Joe Biden was in the Senate for 37 years. He was vice president for 8 years. They're supposed to know better. And so this is a problem. Clearly, we have a problem. And so part of it is for me, like a library issue. And I don't mean to minimize this, but when you check a bag, if you have an airline app, by the time you get to your seat, you get an alert that your bag's on the plane.
Yeah.
Right. So why can't we do a better job tracing classified documents? And the experts would tell you if you put a barcode on them, for example, right, and you have to scan them every time they go in and out of where they're supposed to be stored, that adds the potential for hacking. So there's some security solution here that I'm not smart enough to know about. That's separate. I think you have fact-finding investigations of Pence, of Biden, as of Trump. Then you have law conversations about all three of those. Were laws broken, and if so, were they broken with intent? But I also think there's a bigger issue here, and if only we had at least a few nonpartisan or bipartisan people in Washington who could say we clearly have a problem. Can we just look at, take the names out of it? And how do we do a better job protecting classified information? That would be a valuable venture. I would not count on this town to do it at this moment.
So, John King, we've been talking about the Pence document discovery in relation to Donald Trump, but now how do we look at this in relation to President Biden, where this is still very much unfolding, where he had his Democratic colleagues criticizing him over the weekend, where the Justice Department still is conducting an investigation, and we don't know that they haven't discovered everything that he might have in his possession yet?
We don't. And Jared, I think the interesting point there, and we'll see how the Pence one plays out, is, the Biden people, their argument is we cannot tell you everything because it's sensitive and it's classified, so we have to let the investigation run its course. That frustrates people in our business, but I get it. The issue for them has been, they found documents and they said they turned them over, and then they found more and they said they turned them over, and then they found even more at a different location and said they turned them over. 5 different times they've turned up documents at either a Biden private office or a Biden residence. And so I think it was after the 4th that the Justice Department decided we need to send our own people in. And that's when they discovered even more. I may have the timing. It could have been after the 3rd. But at some point, the Justice Department said, okay, we need to do this ourselves. And we need to send in our people. Now, again, the President of the United States, gave that the green light. He did not fight it. He did not resist that. And that is to his credit. Mike Pence turned the documents over voluntarily. That is to his credit. But now we need to figure out the facts and chain of custody. How sensitive are they? Was there any reason for them to be there in the first place in preparation for a foreign trip, in preparation for some phone conversation? If not, how did they get there? If so, why weren't they returned? So this is very, very complicated. What complicates it even further, I'm lucky here. We work with a number of our legal analysts or former national security officials. Carrie Cordero was on the show today. This is her wheelhouse. You got to find people who have the clearances to look at the documents, who have the clearances to talk to people about what did you do with the documents. So it's not like you left a library book somewhere, a children's book somewhere, and you're trying to figure out how much of a fine do you owe. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but these things tend to run longer than you would think they might have to, just the fact-finding part of it, because it's so sensitive. You have to find the right people.
We're talking with John King from CNN. John, let's move to the debt ceiling fight. You've been hearing more and more economists talking about that reneging on our debt would be a colossal financial disaster. And maybe they're exaggerating. I don't really know enough about economics, but there does seem to be an effort by some of the more conservative Republicans to say we're not going to give in on this. Biden has said he's not going to negotiate on the debt ceiling, which, by the way, is to pay the bills of money the United States has already spent. So are we really going to have this big fight? I mean, considering that this could really hurt people economically, and why would this group of Republicans want to get blamed for that?
That's a great question. I think we're going to have a fight. Are we going to get to a default? I don't know the answer to that. The Treasury says it can take these quote-unquote extraordinary measures and has already started doing that. Essentially, that started the clock. And we have until sometime in late May or early June before the Treasury Department will raise its hand and say we're running out of ways to avoid crisis here. So we're going to learn a lot in the next couple of days. The President of the United States this afternoon has the Democratic leaders of Congress down to try to make sure Democrats are unified. The House Republicans say, we want to negotiate spending cuts. The president's position is and you said it just right, Marjorie, this is about past due bills. This is about money we borrowed during the Trump administration, right? This is about, it's not just, and previous administrations. This is about debt due in the rearview mirror. Some of it in the Biden administration, but most of it in previous administrations. So you have to pay your credit card bill even as you're thinking about, I want to take a big vacation. How do I afford that? Well, I might have to cut the family budget to save money to take the big vacation. Biden says we should have two conversations. Raise the debt ceiling. That's not a negotiation. Let's just have a conversation. Let's do it. Then we'll talk. The House Republicans, and again, you can get this politically, they say we only have, we have one branch of government. We have a narrow majority. We only get several points in the process where we have enough leverage to try to get things that we want. So you can understand it politically. The question is, how far are they willing to go here? And so does this become Democrats let Republicans take us up to the House Republicans take us up to the cliff, and then does somebody blink at the last minute, or do we have a default and there's chaos in the financial markets and perhaps other issues that ramifications, domino effects? We've come close to that a couple of times. We've never gotten there. Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, says it's not going to happen. Does he have to lean on Kevin McCarthy at some point? There are parliamentary gimmicks, so-called discharge position, where Democrats could, if they all signed on to taking the bill to the floor, they'd only need a handful of Republicans. So we're going to go through a lot of different possibilities and scenarios before we get to the push comes to shove moment. But welcome to the drama of the next couple of months of our lives.
We hear what people like Mitch McConnell are saying, but what's the feeling in Washington? How concerned are people that this is going to get out of hand?
More concerned than they have been in the past. Jared, I'm one. I'll plead guilty to this. When this has come up in the past, I've often rolled my eyes saying, you know what, this is a Washington self-made drama because we know at the end they're never going to do this, right? And then they don't do it. There are some people who think because Kevin McCarthy had to do what he did to win the speakership, and because they can remove him pretty much at any time, that there are those who believe that, on truth serum, Kevin McCarthy would say, no, we're not going to default. I'll give you, what do you need? 5 votes, 10 votes, 20 votes. Let's make this happen. But that he might lose his job if he does that. He might lose the speaker's gavel if he does that. So I do think the risk is considerably higher given the precarious nature of Kevin McCarthy's majority and the aggressive nature of many of those who didn't want to vote for him to begin with and who don't seem to show concern about governing. If they start hearing back home, jobs are going to be lost, or the financial sector is going to go crazy, and people's 401ks are going to tank. It's already been a couple of tough years in the markets. Maybe it changes, but I do think the risks are higher. Here's one potential off-ramp for you, and this is part of the president's challenge. You have a number of Democrats in the Senate who are on the ballot in 2024 who are from Trump states. Joe Manchin in West Virginia, Kirsten Sinema in Arizona. She's an independent now. She's not a Democrat. John Tester in Montana, who's a Democrat, who say we should not have this never negotiate strategy. Because why? They're going to have to run in a presidential year in deep red states, and they might want to actually cut spending a little bit. Now, the president's challenge is to tell them, I hear you, but we got to do this in two pieces, right? We do not blink, we do not negotiate on the debt ceiling, then we talk spending. Can the president keep the Democrats together? That's challenge number one, because if you have Democrats in the Senate saying maybe we ought to cut a deal with the Republicans here, that will change the dynamics. Will it get you to the finish line? I don't know, too soon. But it would change the president's politics.
One of the other ironies of this whole thing, I was reading about how, can we blame the Democrats for this, blame the Republicans for this? Well, it seems like we can blame both of them, because ever since 2000, we had 9/11, and we spent all this money on wars in Afghanistan and Iran, and George Bush didn't raise taxes. He cut taxes. Then you have, Obama coming in. We had the financial mess there, and we spent a lot of money on the financial mess. The point being, all through this 20-year period, the money on these extra programs were things that were popular at the time. People wanted relief during the pandemic, so that cost a fortune again. And it's just odd that all these things that people wanted, people may have regretted Afghanistan and Iraq, but at the time they didn't, to have spent all that money on things people wanted, and now they're trying to talk about, are they really talking about Medicare and Social Security in a serious way, to talk about taking money out of that?
There are some Republican proposals that they say are not designed to do that, but that say, for example, that every 5 years we reassess every dollar spent, right? And we have a target for where we're going to spend. So yes, there are proposals. There are proposals that they have not been brought to the floor. They do not have the blessing of the leadership, so they're not active today. But are there plans by some Republicans with authority and credibility in their family, if you will, to do things that could limit or restrict or in the future curtail federal entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicare, or at least force a spending review of those programs? Yes, there are. Are they going to get to the finish line at this moment? Remember, you have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president. But are they going to be proposed? Chuck Schumer just today gave a speech saying, I'm glad we have a Democratic Senate majority to stop all and he used the term insane things, like a national sales tax, for example, that could come out of the House of Representatives. Everybody's positioning right now. The next election has already started. I know we just ended the last one, or they just got sworn in after the results of the last one. But a lot of this is political positioning, but those are things to keep an eye on, without a doubt, as we go forward.
John, we only have about a minute left, but I'm just wondering what we should make of former President Trump going to head up to New Hampshire on Saturday for the first time, since the 2020 campaign. He's going to be out on the road again, going to South Carolina apparently after that.
Really interested in seeing the reaction, because there is no question he's the only declared candidate in 2024. And this has been a very slow, full of speed bumps, legal issues, political issues, controversies. Photos with a mob boss inviting, Kanye and the white supremacists to Mar-a-Lago. This is not a good beginning. Can he get a reset? Will there be good crowds? Will it be interesting? I think it's a fascinating question.
John, thank you very much, as always, for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Great to see you. We have been speaking with CNN's John King. He's chief national correspondent and host of Inside Politics at CNN. That's airing at weekdays at noon, of course. Coming up, why do we sometimes feel so different from our siblings and family despite sharing the same genetics? A new Washington Post article delves into how siblings can turn out so dramatically different from each other. We'll open up the lines to ask you. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
President Biden is halfway through his term. So, how's it going so far? We're talking about what the president has accomplished, what he's fumbled, and whether he's got what it takes to win a second term. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Eversource, committed to helping your business reach its sustainability goals. You can learn more about custom recommendations to help reduce your carbon footprint and lessen your environmental impact at eversource.com. And Delta Dental of Massachusetts. Good oral health is known to protect you from heart disease, depression, and more. You can discover the connection between oral and overall health at expressyourhealthma.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jared Bowen is in for Jim Browdy, who'll be back tomorrow. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday, and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. So it's a good thing that Jim is gone today. We couldn't discuss this when he's here. You know why? Because Jim is an only child, which may explain a lot. But Jared and I are not. So this is the perfect day to talk about why you're so different from your siblings in so many families. Why one of you is the problem child, the other is an angel. Why one of you is a superstar and the other one is a deadbeat. Why one of you has inherited the charming personality of a used car salesman and the other one is hiding in the closet, doesn't want to talk to anybody at all. So despite sharing the same genes from your parents, how much of our differing personalities is due to nature or to nurture? Well, there's this new Washington Post article explains that we actually might inherit less similar genetic codes than commonly assumed. More of them may come from other parts of our family, like grandparents or either other areas, not just from our parents. But we want to hear your stories of being different from your siblings and why you're obviously, of course, the best sibling of the bunch. 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number to talk about your sibling rivalries? Do you have one, Jared?
Well, I do have a sister.
Yes. How's that going?
I think, it's interesting if I think about it. We are both the products of our parents, obviously, but in different ways. I think you can trace both of it, both parents in both of us. But I think that we're very similar, but we're also very, very different. And what I was really struck by in the Washington Post piece was that the DNA comes down, and obviously you're the same people, but then it all gets mixed up before it lands in you. So this is why you can have very disparate traits, like the Bulger brothers, for example, where you
That's
have
a great one.
One who's a crime boss and the other who is the boss of the state senate.
Yeah, speaking Latin, Billy Bulger and Whitey Bulger. That's a great contrast. And they were from a pretty big family too. I always say if it's a big family, if you have got 5 kids, 8 kids, 10 kids, few people have 10 kids anymore, but a couple of them go off the rails, a couple of them go to jail, a couple of people commit crimes, on a daily basis. Well, at least you got the other 5 or 6 that are behaving. But if there's only 2 of you or 3 of you, there's much more pressure. And I think there's a lot of parents in these stories that are wondering why their older child was into 3 boys, big athlete, big man about town. The other kid is staying home behind his computer, doesn't want to talk to anybody. And the third kid is totally different. You do wonder why that is. So we'll hear from you about this. Are you different from your siblings? You, of course, are the best one. We understand that because you're listening to us right now. But why is that? What do you think it's about? And do you get along with your sibling? Are you jealous of your sibling? Do you worry that mom likes your sibling more than mom likes you?
And let me clarify, you are not a family of 5.
I'm not a family of 5. My sister and I. And it's funny, my sister sounds just like me. So sometimes people, sometimes I'll go someplace and people say, oh, I recognize your voice. And that happens to my sister. Are you No, I'm not.
She doesn't leap on the opportunity to say why yes, I am Marjorie Egan.
No, she doesn't. She says, that's my sister. Anyway, 877-301-8970 is the number, 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number to ask about why you are, or to tell us about why you are so different from your sister. Jack in New York City, you're the first one this hour. Thanks for calling.
My pleasure. The differences between my sisters and myself is there's a performance gene in my family. Both of my sisters, one older, one younger, are deathly afraid of speaking in public or appearing in public, and I have been a lifelong performer professionally. My mother had the same issue with her 2 siblings. My mother was a performer at heart, and my grandmother had the same story in her family. So there's a performance gene that runs through the family, differing with the siblings.
That's a good one, Jack. Thank you very much for that call. I mean, you do see that where some people are really, they can't wait to get up on the stage, and some people forget it. Never happened in a million years.
And that, I think that's an interesting point, too, in the artistic way, because I often have done reporting over the years. You see how that lineage goes down through families. Although, as I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure all of the siblings necessarily carry the gene. But you think of Carly Simon, her sister was incredibly artistic. So was her brother, actually. But you definitely see often the line from the parents through to the kids.
Donna watching on YouTube says, birth order makes a big difference. Hundreds of photos of firstborn in my family, and not so much for the rest of us. You know the story about the babies, right? Yeah. First baby, you come home from the hospital. The baby's in a little bassinet right next to mom and dad. Everybody's got the hand on the baby, making sure the baby's still breathing. Second kid comes home from the hospital, maybe spend a couple of days in the bassinet, gets moved, very quickly into the corner of the room. Nobody's got the hand on the back of the baby. And the third poor kid doesn't even make it into the room. The third kid is down the hall somewhere. So I think that's really, really true about the pictures. Are you older or younger?
I'm the older, yeah. Okay. And so, 20 years later, the siblings are going through the belongings of the parents. And, well, where's my scrapbook?
Exactly.
Where's my first booty and my first tooth? And
exactly.
Who could be bothered by that point?
Exactly.
Did it once.
Denise from Midford. Is it Midford? Thank you for calling.
Hi, Denise.
Hi,
yes,
Denise.
It's Medford. Hello, it's Medford.
Medford, okay, thank you.
Yep.
So what's the deal?
So I heard, I was out for a walk and I heard you were going to talk about this today, and I said I have to call in.
Okay, we're ready.
I am a twin. I have a twin sister. We're supposedly identical, but we're old enough that they didn't do testing way back when. And we always said we'd find out if one of us needed a kidney, but we're too old for that now. So for all intents and purposes, we're identical. And we have a sister 10 and a half months older than us. So they had 3 daughters in less than a year. So our older sister is totally different from my twin and I. My twin and I have, on occasion, sent each other the same birthday card on the same
Oh
birthday.
my gosh.
So, all right, but our older sister is totally different from us. My twin and I are very much into experiences, and my older sister is into things. She loves things. She can't have enough of anything. And if she gets one thing that she likes, she has to have 20 of them. But my twin and I are totally different from that. So, interestingly enough, we also have a brother. He's almost 8 years younger than us. And he is also a thing person and not an experienced person. So,
Denise, that's a good one.
Yeah, I say it's funny how the gene pool shakes out. That's how I put it. So,
Well, that's a great point because, Denise, thank you for the call. Identical twins are identical twins in very many ways. Obviously, sometimes you can't tell them apart. But this Washington Post story says something very interesting about identical twins. It says in this it was a 2004 study led by this guy from Duke University, a psychologist in neuroscience, found that differences in the way mothers treat their twins can determine the personalities of the twins. You talk about the nature-nurture argument. This is the nurture argument. If mom prefers one twin over the other and makes that clear, and apparently there are mothers who do that. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to treat her but the same, right? And it is just tougher on one than the other. Then the one who's treated with more toughness will wind up a different personality than the one who is unconditionally adored. I mean, that's fascinating, I think.
Well, it's obviously speaks to nature versus nurture.
Kate in Watertown, thank you for calling.
Hi, Kate.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. So I would say my sister, who's 7 years older than me, is really snarky, judgmental, know-it-all, curses like a sailor. And my husband would say that we're exactly alike.
Oh, really? Snarky and judgmental, huh?
Yes, but I think I'm much nicer and I'm a better baker. And though I think that our voices both sound like we're like prepubescent gnomes, I would say hers is a lot more high-pitched and a little nasally.
Right, so Kate, you don't like your sister, it sounds like? Is that the story here?
I love her.
Oh, you do? Okay.
She's the best. And she doesn't listen, so I listen to your show. She doesn't, so I'm not afraid that she'll hear it.
That's right. Oh, that's a very good point, because Jared was going to tell us secrets about his sibling, but he is afraid that they might be listening, or his parents might be listening. That would get him in big trouble, so he can't really be truthful. Hey, so Kate, would you call yourself snarky and judgmental?
Yes, but not as much. And I think that
not as much, of course.
Judgmental. Like, my sister is judgmental across the board. Like, she thinks she's, like, the greatest. But
okay.
I think I am judgmental in accurate ways.
Oh, okay. That's how I feel. Kate, thank you very much for the call. I feel like I'm snarky and judgmental in accurate ways, as opposed to my sister, who's snarky and judgmental in incorrect ways.
I'm snarky and judgmental, and it comes from a good place. But, my sister and I have clashed, at points, as all siblings do, not in a William and Harry way by any means. None of us has landed on the dog bowl.
Yeah.
But people will pull us aside later and say, you are the same people.
This is really nasty, really, what's happened. I mean, I get...
You're talking about William
and Harry. I mean, do you need to write a whole book about how mean your brother was to you in the older years? I mean, that's kind of what a lot of this book is about, right?
No, you don't need to. Need being the operative word in that sentence. Yeah,
mm-hmm. Okay, listen to this. My younger sister is deeply jealous of me and my brother. She was always the problem child, made our childhoods horrible. I didn't want to become a parent, fearing my child would turn out like my sister. I have one marvelous daughter, but till today, I don't like my sister.
Ouch.
Okay, Lillian, I guess you took care of that. That people want to know if you have siblings. You've said you have siblings.
You're talking about me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have one sister. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I see that question there.
And it's also interested in families where the kids are adopted. Is it the nature versus nurture argument there, too? Because they're kids who are adopted, they have different genes that come from different families, but how much they end up being alike and how much they end up being different because of the people that raised them,
And then how would you grow into your parents? And yeah, it's interesting to follow those three.
Oh my God. I don't know about you, but
Okay.
it's funny how I think when you become a parent too, I mean, I hear myself saying things my mother said to me that they just kind of like come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Because I heard it a million times when I was a kid. Michael in Virginia, what do you think?
Hi, Michael.
Okay, thanks for taking me 2 days in a row.
You're welcome.
My sister is 2 years younger than I am,
Mm-hmm.
and we're on the outs right now. And it's not because we are different; it's because we're so the same that we share the same faults and virtues. And I can see in her, like me, it's so weird. I mean, if you looked at our bone structure, we look almost identical. We're not twins, but we come from the same baseline. And it's the decisions that we each made that put me in sort of the black sheep category, even though I worked for Newark, in Newport forever. She's a high power Karen. You know what a Karen is?
Yes, I do know what a Karen. Karen's not a very nice thing to be, is it?
Not very nice at all.
Yeah, a white racist
And
woman
so
is what it is, right?
It's what?
A white racist woman.
No, it's just a Karen who's like, can I speak to the manager kind of thing?
Oh,
you know?
okay. All right.
Yeah, so she's not the racist thing. Even
Well, that's
though we're
good.
from the South, we're not all racist down here.
Okay.
But it's our similarities that push us apart. Because we can see that's me. And it's creepy. Like when I was like, say 6 years old and I got this 4-year-old sister and she's acting the same way I do, it pushed me away from her. I mean, maybe that's just something kind of, you don't want to see your own ugly side turned against you.
Well, so Michael from Virginia, we can help you because if you see yourself and your sister, then you know how to fix whatever's happening with you right now.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, of course. And that's the easy. Oh, but she has a husband and kids, so there's all these complicating factors.
Well, Michael, thank you
thanks
for the call.
Being my therapy session.
Oh,
today.
you're very welcome. You often hear people say that they have a difficult time getting along with siblings. They can get along with other people, work friends, social friends, their spouses, their significant others, their romantic partners, but they have a real problem getting along with their siblings.
Well, that's because siblings know where all the buttons are.
That's right. That's right. And you learn them at a very early age.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Like when you go and ask your sister if you can borrow an elastic, and she says, no.
Did that maybe happen to you at one
Yeah,
point?
my sister never let me have any elastics. It was very upsetting. She was older than me, and so she was bigger than I was, and so I couldn't get the elastic, and I've been traumatized about it forever. Al on the road.
Have you ever talked to her about the elastic?
I have not. But that is the other thing, the things you don't talk about, right?
Does your sister listen to the radio show?
No, she does not listen to the radio show, and she makes a point of telling me that, too.
Does she have friends who listen to the radio show?
Yes, she does.
Okay.
Al on the road, thank you for calling.
Hey, guys, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I have an identical twin brother. His name is Al. I have a younger brother, and his name is Al as well.
What?
And,
You're all Al?
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Well, that's like, who's the fighter? George Foreman, who named all his sons George? Is that like one of those deals?
Yeah.
Like your parents were trying to be like George Foreman?
It's Albert, Alan, and Alice. It's not. Don't ask me. I had very little to do with
Okay.
the name.
Okay.
But my identical twin brother, and I are very similar in a lot of ways, but we're extremely different in a lot of ways as well. He's a vegetarian. I'm an avid hunter. He's a lifelong bachelor. I'm married with 2 kids. There's a number of different things like that where we're complete opposites. But like you can't beat us in Pictionary. We're in sync with each other and stuff like that.
So what do you think the differences come from, Al?
I think a lot of it is nurture because even though we were raised in, I think up until the 6th grade, we were even in the same class. And like my mother would dress us like she'd buy one red outfit and one blue outfit.
Yeah.
Switch the top and bottom.
Yeah.
Those pictures are comedic gold now. But
But you get along, right? Because I find this interesting. Almost every identical twin I know, there's never any rift at all, ever.
Oh, really?
Uh-oh.
When we're getting along, we get along very, very well. When we don't get along, it's hands are flying. It's
That's the other thing.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Al, thank you for the call, because I think that's the other thing. There could be a lot of hand-to-hand combat when we're talking about siblings, right? I mean, you're not usually getting into physical fracases with people at the office, or let's hope you're not, or with other people in your life. But I would imagine you had a physical fracas once or twice with your sibling. Have you?
If it did happen, it was when we were kids.
Well, exactly. But those kinds of things do happen when you're
I'm stuck in
kids.
that word, fracas.
Fracas, okay.
I haven't heard that word in 25 years.
Well, okay, dust up. What do you want to call it?
Dust up.
Physical things, like when I couldn't get the elastic and I had to do something about it. You know what I mean? You have to get
That's
physical about the whole balderdash. Exactly. So Joanne and Dighton. Hey,
do we have
Joanne.
time? I don't think we have time for Joanne.
Oh, we don't have time. I always forget we're out of time. Joanne, 10 seconds. Do you hate your sister or you love your sister?
I love my sister and brother dearly.
Yeah.
And it's been a great ride. My parents treated us the same all the while growing up, even though there was an 11 and 12-year difference.
Okay. Joanne, I'm sorry that we're out of time to explore the wonderful things that went on in your family.
Ending.
But it's okay, because a lot of us don't want to hear about wonderful things in their families, because that makes the juxtaposition to our families and our fracases.
You just cut her off because there were no fracases in Joanne's family.
Okay, we are done for today.
A fracas-free family, if you will.
Fracas-free family. They didn't have to fight about elastics in her family, I guess. Tune in tomorrow. Jim is going to be back. We'll hear from NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, our national security expert Juliet Kayyem. Maybe she can tell us about it. Is everybody going to have documents in their back pockets? So. GBH executive editor Jared Bowen is going to be back again tomorrow.
That's me.
Our food policy analyst Corby Kummer, Larry Creechan, I hope I pronounced that correctly, of the great. Oh, this is going to be good. The Green Energy Consumers Alliance, and Kate Peters of Eversource Mass Save to answer listeners' questions, because Jim and I blew it last week about the ins and outs of switching to green energy. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Brendan Deedy, our engineers, John the Claw Parker, Brian Bell was on the boards for us today. Our executive producer is Jenny Bologna. We want to thank the staff down here at the Boston Public Library, Angelica Marrero, Brad Lewis, and Evelyn Britta. We want to thank the people that came down here to the Boston Public Library to see the show. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank you for so ably and brilliantly filling in for Jim, even though you beat me in the news quiz.
And we won't have a fracas about it.
We won't have a fracas about it. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great day, and hope you can tune in tomorrow.